Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. This week's episode is going to be all about the back half of season 1. And joining me, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's going on is, today we're going to be talking about 73 Yards, Dot and Bubble, Rogue, The Legend of Ruby Sunday, and Empire of Death. If you want our thoughts on either the 60th anniversary specials or The Church on Ruby Road, you can go catch that D Plus Show episode 201. Or if you want our thoughts on the first few episodes of this recent run, Space Babies, The Devil's Cord, and Boom, we talked about that back on episode 217 of that D Plus Show. Why did we pick it? Because the season wrapped up, and it was something we were following along as it went. A little bit of the history lesson here. These episodes released between, or this season at least, released between May 10th and June 21st, 2024. The series had a runtime between 46 and 57 minutes. In the Doctor Who timeline of things, we had Series 13, The Flux, 6-episode run from October to December of 2021. And we had the 2022 specials, Eve of the Daleks, Legend of the Sea Devils, and The Power of the Doctor. We had the 2023 specials, aka the aforementioned 60th anniversary specials, The Star Beast, Wildly Yonder, and The Giggle, as well as The Church on Ruby Road in November and December of last year. Series 14 / Season 1 per the Disney Plus branding here, May through June. And then next up, The Doctor will return in the holiday special this year, Joy to the World, featuring Nicola Coughlan from Bridgerton fame, as well as it's written by Stephen Moffat, returning once again after Boom. And then we have Season 2, theoretically already shot and in the can and just kind of in post-production now. So TBD 2025 for when that gets aired. And according to some reports I saw, they've already started working on scripts and stuff for a season 3 / series 16 with shooting planning to start in, I think, beginning of 2025 for that. Weird because they're just shooting so far ahead of time that this run of episodes has been done for a year and just took a while to get out. All that fun stuff. Anyway, we had 4 directors over the course of this first season, each one directing 2 episodes apiece. In our previous episode, we talked about Julianne Robinson, who directed Space Babies and Boom. We also talked about Ben Chessel, who at that point had directed The Devil's Cord. He also came in and directed Rogue. And he has Julianne Robinson, assorted directing credits back to 2000, including Grey's Anatomy, Weeds, Parks and Rec, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Bridgerton. So amusing that she wasn't the one that came in and directed the Bridgerton episode. But Ben Chessel, who did, has assorted other various directing credits back to 2002. Nothing that really jumped out at me. So I imagine a lot of UK stuff that hasn't really kind of reached across the pond. Similarly, Dylan Holmes Williams directed 73 Yards and Dot and Bubble. Again, various credits back to 2015, but nothing that jumped out at me. And Jamie Donahue directed the 2-part finale, The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death, with credits back to 2013. Our writers, we talked in the previous episode about Russell T. Davis and Stephen Moffat. Russell T. Davis ended up writing everything except Boom and Rogue for the season, having previously worked on shows like Queer as Folk, Casanova, the original rebooted run of Doctor Who that started back in 2005, and then the subsequent spin-offs, Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures. And Stephen Moffat would take over as showrunner during the 11th and 12th Doctor eras, having also been the showrunner of the series Coupling, Sherlock, and writing many of the iconic Doctor Who episodes during Davis's first run, including The Empty Child Doctor Dances, The Girl in the Fireplace, Blink, and Silence in the Library / Forest of the Dead. Newcomers to this episode, Kate Herron and Bryony Redman wrote Rogue. Kate Herron was the Loki Season 1 showrunner and director. And aside from that, these two don't have much in the way of writing credits, but they are both credited for an in-development movie, according to IMDb, on The Sims. So,
What?
blah, 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 to see if that actually comes out. There's my Simlish that I haven't actually played the games in probably 15 years.
Yeah, jeez.
Back since like beginning of Sims 3, maybe. Yeah, I don't think I ever really touched Sims 4. Anyway, our cast of characters. A lot of these names are going to rush through because there are a lot, because we're covering more than half a season. But we already discussed in the previous episode Shudigatwa as the 15th Doctor here, having been in Sex Education and Barbie. Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday, having been in Coronation Street. We talked in the last episode about Susan Twist, who was the weird pop-up character that kept making appearances. Obviously, we got a much deeper understanding of who she was by season end. We got Michelle Greenridge and Angela Winter as Carla and Cherry Sunday. We have Anita Dobson as the mysterious Mrs. Flood, having been in stuff like EastEnders. Gemma Redgrave, reprising her role, has been Kate Lethbridge Stewart since The Power of Three back in 2012. Bonnie Langford, reprising her role once again as Melanie Bush, the 7th Doctor's companion Mel. She's also been in EastEnders for a number of time. And then new to kind of our show that were not covered in the previous episode, we have Nuran Barnard as the evil Welsh Prime Minister Roger ap Gwilliam in 73 Yards. He'd been in Dunkirk prior to this. We have Callie Cook, the evil Lindy Pepperbean in Dot and Bubble. She'd been in the show Cheaters. Tom Rhys Harries as Ricky September in Dot and Bubble. He was in the I forgot the guy's name, Guy Ritchie movie, The Gentleman. Mm-hmm. Indira Varma was the Duchess of Pemberton in the Rogue episode. She's not new to the universe. She had a recurring character in the original run of Torchwood, as well as like she continued playing that character in some of like the Torchwood podcast / audio episodes and stuff. She's also a voice I've been hearing a lot recently because she plays Vivian in Dragon Age Inquisition.
Yeah.
As I've been replaying that. She's also in Mass Effect Andromeda, Game of Thrones, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and The Legend of Vox Machina from the Critical Role crew. Jonathan Groff, of course, also the titular Rogue in the episode Rogue. A Tony / Broadway stalwart going back to Spring Awakening. He's also in Glee. He's Kristoff in Frozen. He was the King George III in Hamilton. And he just won a Tony for Merrily We Roll Along on Broadway. Yasmin Finney returned as Rose Noble. We had previously talked about her 2 episodes ago. She'd been in the show Heartstopper. Alexander Devrient was in the Giggle episode and returns here at Unit as Colonel Christopher Ibrahim. He was previously in one of his earliest credits actually was in Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows, and I pulled this in for you, Cam. He's one of the many voices that you'll find in Iadon Chronicle: 100 Heroes. I forgot to pay attention who he was to shout out if he's a character you know or have recruited.
It's possible I've recruited more than half the characters.
Yeah, I think he plays like 3 different voices in there. So
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Lenny Rush makes his debut as a unit officer in this one as Morris Gibbons. He was in Enola Holmes 2, Dodger. He's in an episode of Renegade Nell that we did that Deep Push show on. And I have seen the episode of Taskmaster that he's on. So shout out to that. He's also a UK comedian. So he makes the rounds out there. Genesis Linnea as Harriet Arbinger. She was recently in the Halo live action series. Gabrielle Wolfe as the voice of Sutek, at age 91, reprises the role that he played in the original suit tech appearances from the Fourth Doctor serial Pyramids of Mars. He was also more recently seen or heard in the Hooniverse as the Beast in the 10th Doctor two-parter, The Impossible Planet and The Satan Pit. So when they call for a voice that has kind of the devilish or death connotations, they call Gabriel Wolf. So shout out to him. And then lastly, Cheyenne Clifford plays the kind woman that the Doctor meets and gets a spoon from in Empire of Death. And she was most notably in Fleabag. A little bit of trivia. I pulled like one or two things, kind of a little bit from each episode. In 73 Yards, one of the notable items there, this was the first episode of Doctor Who to start without a title sequence since Resolution in 2019. And other previous episodes of New Who without a title sequence are Sleep No More in 2015 and The Woman Who Fell to Earth in 2018. Dot and Bubble, aside from his work on The Giggle, the closing sequence that is in this episode, Dot and Bubble, was the very first thing that Ncuti got was shot for the series. So coming in immediately with emotional turmoil and racism. Yay. RTD, Russell T. Davis, revealed that he originally pitched a version of this story to Stephen Moffat back in 2010 as an 11th Doctor story, basically after he'd stepped down as showrunner, but it ended up being rejected due to the tech limitations of the time. So now that he's back in charge, he gave it another go. Some trivia from Rogue. The Doctor dances to the 2001 Kylie Minogue song Can't Get You Out of My Head. Minogue, of course, previously appeared in Doctor Who playing Astrid Peth as in the 2007 Christmas special Voyage of the Damned. The episode features instrumental versions of Billie Eilish's Bad Guy and Lady Gaga's Poker Face as a reference to Bridgerton, which does the same kind of orchestral interpretations of very modern pop culture songs in some of their many ball sequences. When the Doctor is showing the faces of his previous carnations via hologram, one of the Doctors is the Schalke Doctor, quote unquote, an alternative incarnation voiced by Richard E. Grant in the animated miniseries Doctor Who Scream of the Schalke 2003, i.e. prior to the series being rebooted. This is the first time this incarnation has been referenced in a Doctor Who series. So, once again, playing fast and loose with what Doctors are canon and the whole numbering convention of the Doctors. So yes, there we go. Legend of Ruby Sunday, a couple of little trivia points here. After greeting Rose Noble, the Doctor asks, "How's your uncle?" Rose's uncle, of course, being the retired 14th Doctor, as seen in The Giggle. And Sutekh returns to the show after almost 49 years, his previous appearance being Pyramids of Mars Part 4 back in 1975, originally broadcast November 15th, 1975. And then some Empire of Death trivia. I went a little harder here. The memory TARDIS is literally littered with Easter eggs to the show's 60-year history. So go check out any of the videos that have done frame-by-frame breakdowns of everything that's in there. I did not bother digging into those. But the memory TARDIS was also featured in Tales of the TARDIS, a series of 60th anniversary shorts that included old Doctors and companions reuniting and reflecting on past adventures. I believe this is kind of like an exclusive to the BBC iPlayer series of short things. It's unclear if this will ever make its way over onto like Disney Plus or anything like that.
I don't imagine that it will for whatever reason. It
seems like it's the kind of thing they could throw into like the, special features or whatever.
Yeah, maybe.
The important 73 yards from earlier in the series returns as the Doctor mentions that the perception filter of the TARDIS is 66.7 meters, which Ruby immediately equates to 73 yards. It was also notably the distance between the CCTV camera and that fateful night on Ruby Road, Christmas 2004. Basically, they say, yeah, there's a CCTV camera 66 yards away, or 66 meters away. We get a lot of planet shoutouts, including Skaro, the home of the Daleks, Telos, one of the homes of the Cybermen, the Ood Sphere, home of the Ood, and then Agua Santina, the planet with the kind woman and the spoon, is an entirely new one. And the others are some potentially deep cuts. Only 2 are from the New Who era, including Messaline, which is where the Doctor's daughter Jenny was created / cloned, and Shan Shen, which was the planet that they visited at the beginning of Turn Left, where Donna kind of gets pulled into an alternate universe. We also have classic show locations referenced, like Vortis from The Web Planet, Tygella from Megalos, Califrax from The Pirate Planet, and Spiridon from Planet of the Daleks. And then lastly, just a couple little speculation trivia things in here that I've seen kind of making the rounds. When we obviously meet, spoilers, Ruby's mother, Louise Miller, at the end of Empire of Death, and we learn the name of Ruby's father, William Benjamin Garnett. People, this is my own editorializing here, people who want a little bit more Rise of Skywalker and a little less The Last Jedi in their life have begun speculating a twist that will reveal the evil Prime Minister Roger Ap Gwilliam, which Ap Gwilliam being Welsh for son of William, will turn out to be related to Ruby as a step-sibling of sorts, sharing the same William father. And then
no. I
think especially because Russell T Davies has come out and said that it was very important that he kind of make Ruby's mother just a normal person, is a direct reference to he liked that part about The Last Jedi and did not like that they went in and undid it in The Rise of Skywalker. So
yeah, no,
it seems weird that he would try and do that.
Yeah.
But also it does add credence to why that character is as important as he seems to be in the few appearances that he or the couple references and a couple appearances he gets over the course of the season.
I don't think that works for so many other reasons. He wouldn't just have the last name son of William if that's just not how names work.
I mean, in Welsh culture, it is. That's why he's so.
No. But that's this family's name. He's not given that name because his dad's name William, so he has that as his last name. It's a surname. It follows them down the line.
Again, I think Welsh naming conventions,
different?
and he is he might have had a different given name at birth, but I mean he is also very clearly depicted as a proud son of Wales. So maybe he has just embraced that as his, in the same way that Ted Cruz is not really named Ted Cruz, but that's what that's who he runs as and what his platform is. So it could be the same kind of thing that he's running as Roger Ap Gwilliam, but yeah, maybe is Roger, Benjamin Garnett or something like that.
Or folks, hear me out. It's really important to the message of, and to the kind of importance that was the toy maker. The toy maker bringing in this element of conceptualized fun and play into it means that things that normally would not have investiture, so to speak, on a cosmic scale, suddenly do. That's the entire point. And Ruby's mother being this hidden figure, the importance of Ruby's mother, who she is and all of that, comes down to it's such a great inverse of what he did with Bad Wolf, or the things that people expected him to do this again. And instead he subverted all of that by being no, Ruby's mother was important because it turns out at this point in time, this unbelievably powerful god was obsessed with it. And then the investiture that people put into finding who Ruby's mother was is what created this phenomena around it.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that, and the thing that the Doctor leans on at the very end is, it's incredible how the way that we think things are important is what makes them important.
Yeah. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the whole kind of ending of Empire of Death more when we kind of go through episode by episode.
Gosh, I can't handle.
I can't
handle.
I find it highly amusing that the people who immediately started jumping to this speculation, it's you missed the entire point of the end of the episode of, hey, yeah, it was very intentional that she's just a normal person. And maybe her dad was also just a normal 15-year-old guy. And never knew that he had a daughter, never knew that this had happened, kind of stuff. Yeah.
Hear me, and also hear me out. Maybe the entire point of Rose actually being Bad Wolf in this entire like conjunction with it is that, well, why did the Doctor pick up a shop girl? Like, it's part of that storyline. It's part of that story arc. It's part of that like that overall journey that we go on with Rose and her importance to the universe.
The majority of the Doctor's companions are nobodies.
Yeah, that's the entire point. Like, there's nothing actually special about Clara except for the fact that she's doing impossible things by showing up multiple times and dying to save the Doctor. Like, that's what's special. That's what's intriguing about her. But when you actually meet Clara, she's a totally normal person.
Yeah.
And that's the point. The point of like that a lot of these showrunners have done is the Doctor is fascinated by important people who don't understand how deeply connected they are to the universe. And that's part of the storytelling of companions of being, and that's why we feel connected to these companions, because it could be us. Like, God, I just like, people just want to make things that aren't important more important than they could ever possibly be, and it frustrates me. Which is crazy that I say this, because I'm usually one of these people.
Exactly.
Anyway.
That is absolutely, I was going to call you out on that. You are absolutely
halfway through my
bullshit speculative kind of person.
Halfway through my diatribe, I'm like, I'm talking about myself when it comes to a lot of things.
You had that like hint of self-realization in the middle of your self-realization.
My thing is like, I overthink things and overcomplicate things.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of these people
so
are
I'm just I'm in goodness, like in good faith, like I understand. And then there are just some people who just be like, no, it has to be more important.
I mean, the other thing that I will like kind of call out here is like, obviously, as with like the MCU and kind of a lot of like the big franchise stuff, there's become like their own little like cottage industry. Like I said, there's entire videos dedicated to all of the Easter eggs you can find in there and all that stuff. So I think, and Russell T Davies, I think, likes to play into that speculation, and definitely, I think that's one of the things we can discuss later is like he planted a lot of seeds that Ruby's mother was far more important than she ends up being. And it's like, okay, yeah, obviously a lot of those ended up being red herrings, but were they red herrings that paid off appropriately, or were they just red herrings for the sake of being red herrings? Like the most notably, like Ruby pointing so that we find out she's pointing back at a sign on Ruby Road, or the sign that says Ruby Road. And if you go back and watch like the Church on Ruby Road episode, there is absolutely no sign there. There is no lamppost. There's no nothing that she's actually pointing at. It's they backed themselves into a corner and said, well, we need to give a reason for why she's so ominous and why she's pointing at the Doctor, in quotes. And how successful were they with giving the real reason for what happened?
I thought it was dumb, but I
same
didn't
with
care.
like, okay, if Ruby's mother was only as important as the importance we were putting on her, what is with Ruby's magical ability to create snow everywhere?
But this thing, it's not that she's creating the snow, it's that it's being pulled from her. It's that whole thing that the Doctor explains about that moment in time. He can't go back to it because of the crossover thing with it. But then there's also her. It's also, I mentioned at the top of it, where it's about this idea of this new complex, the new complexity of what does play as an element that exists within the metaphysical space of our universe does.
I mean, yeah, like I imagine you can kind of point to a lot of like, well, here's the reason they gave, and it's just a matter of how successful is the reason sold or something like that. Because you also have like the Maestro being like, what's the secret song in her heart or whatever, and it's like, yeah, well, like, why was she special to the Maestro and all that stuff? But,
because the canticles that were being sung were sung when she was left on the doorstep of the church.
Yeah, but that, I mean, that's a okay, yeah, like Carol of the Bells. It's not that special of a song. It's a pretty common song, actually.
By itself, no, but it's important to like its importance to Ruby as part of like a part of her origin.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you delve into the song within her heart, and it's this connected to this like convoluted point, because as we know, the Sunak was attached to Sutek was attached to the TARDIS the entire time, which like that throws an additional like hot pot element into it.
Yeah, I mean, even that
causing distortions and stuff.
Even that comes into a conversation of like, okay, well, has he really been there since 1975 slash 1911? I think is when the Pyramids of Mars story takes place in the timeline. Because we've had the TARDIS explode. We've had like the TARDIS on Trenzalore, and so like we've had so even there, it's like, has he really been there the whole time, or did something the toy maker did kind of put him there in the wibbly wobbly timeliness of everything?
I think that's
anyway.
entirely possible. Not only that, but you also have the flux that eliminated half of existence that ever existed, and it's like we're getting into like these very big choices and moments that happen throughout Doctor Who history.
Yeah.
And a radio drama about the pyramids of Mars is like, it's kind of a wild thing that it's like, we pulled from that, and it's
it wasn't a radio drama.
Sorry,
like Pyramids of Mars was a film.
What did you say earlier was a pyramid or was a radio drama? I might have I might have misclocked
Indira Varma had been in some of the like Torchwood radio drama stuff.
There you go. Oh, when he was okay, that makes sense.
Like she was in the show Torchwood, but then also went and did.
Yeah, sorry.
And I said that that Gabriel Wolf had, in addition to voicing Sutek back in Pyramids of Mars, also did the Impossible Planet two-parter that had basically the Beast, like the.
That's right. Okay, sorry.
Satan planet.
Yeah. For people who don't know, and you wouldn't know because we haven't mentioned it, I just got off work. So mentally, I might be a little at the phrase.
Gotcha.
That being said, so I apologize for misremembering that.
Oh, good. Lastly, before we dive into kind of general thoughts on the episodes, another speculation trivia bit. Eagle Eye fans have spotted that Mrs. Flood's outfits, going back to the church on Ruby Road, appear to mirror outfits worn by past companions, including Clara, Rory, and Ryan. And then, most notably here, the outfit at the end of Empire of Death appears to mirror a very specific outfit of Romana's, the Time Lord companion of the Tom Baker Fourth Doctor. Additionally, they're not entirely visible in the episode itself, but prop photos that were posted on like Instagram or somewhere have also revealed that the suitcase she carries at the end of the episode has a ton of travel sticker references to Hooniverse locations like Gallifrey and Clom and various other like Cardiff as a very like real one / where Torchwood happened. So yes, it was one of those I saw prior to the two-part finale where she kind of like returned. I saw a picture making the round that was Mrs. Flood in Church on Ruby Road alongside, a very iconic Clara outfit. And it's like, oh yeah, that looks like exactly the same outfit. That seems like it's probably not a coincidence. And so later when she's wearing the same kind of like a Marty McFly-esque jacket that Rory wears at one point, and a similar outfit to the 13th Doctor Ryan, like with a little hoodie and kind of coat, and then very just notably the white fur holiday-esque coat that, in knowing the tradition of Doctor Who returning for the holidays, seems to be a reference or setup for that in some way or fashion. But then people were like, hey, this looks exactly like something Romana wore in the Fourth Doctor episodes.
Man, people are wildly crazy.
Yep. Again, you are often one of those people,
but
just with very different things.
Yeah, it's just very different. It's for me. It's never going to be outfits for me necessarily.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I'm not.
This outfit thing reminds me of, I'll see scrolling through Instagram, I'll see all the time like Critical Role closet or D20 closet like accounts where it's just a side by side of here's an outfit somebody wore on Critical Role or on D20, and here's where you can buy that same outfit or whatever.
That's or, like, so weird.
It's like so and so was wearing this outfit, and it's like the the sale link outfit of the thing, and it's like how did you reverse engineer find that? That's where I'm kind of.
I thought it was creepy up until I realized people probably just are like, man, I would really like to know where they got that jacket.
Exactly.
And it's like, oh, that's actually pretty fair and innocent.
Yeah.
But my initial thought was, fucking weirdos on the internet always creeping on these people, man.
Yeah.
Leave your favorite people on the internet alone. They got to live their lives.
One of my favorites was early, like midway through campaign 3 here on Critical Role, tangent. Abria came in for like a guest run of episodes, and I think in like the first episode, she's wearing a basically a self-made shirt, or like somebody else made it for her, but it is it's a direct reference to like a tattoo that somebody got inspired by a little Critical Role kind of like ad break that they have, where it's like Taliesin Jaffe and Ashley Johnson are like playing with like little, Critical Role minis from like Wiz Kids or something like that. And Matt Mercer comes out. He's like, "You guys, like, you need to be careful with those. Like, they're very valuable, and I need them to shoot with in like 15 minutes or whatever." And Taliesin and Ashley kind of give him crap, and then they grab like the Matt Mercer mini and like beat him down, and they're like, "Kick him, take his vest, or loot his body, take his vest." And somebody basically like got a tattoo of like a 2D image of the Matt Mercer mini on its side with the quote like Luda's corpse, take his vest, and Abria is wearing that tattoo on like a shirt in in one of her appearances, kind of as a direct like, "Haha, Matt, I'm doing this to mess with you." And so yeah, somebody found that and did the side by side of the shirt she's wearing and the meme stuff that it came from. So anyway, side tangent over. So Cam, what did you think as we go back and revisit these kind of episode by episode? As we said, we talked about our impressions on the first few episodes already. So here we're going back to 73 Yards. What did you think of 73 Yards?
Interesting bottle episode.
Especially right after Boom.
Yeah, right after Boom. It was
bottle episode. Of
I think having two of these back to back was a bit too much.
It's
in a lot of ways.
The other thing I'll throw out here, like the term bottle episode,
sure,
is not really applicable in this case.
That's
in this
fair.
Particular case, because they're all over the place.
Yeah.
This I think is more what, especially like Doctor Who people kind of classify as like a Doctor Light episode. So it's like your Blink. It's like your
fair.
It's that the Doctor, in order, especially because during the filming of this first series, Ncuti was still filming Sex Education, I think. So basically they didn't have him as much, and I think that's why we get a little bit like this 73 Yards and Dot and Bubble are both Doctor Light episodes and focused on kind of other characters.
That's fair. For me, this one felt very I think that having a Doctor Light episode right after a bottle episode is a bit of a not a whirlwind, but a whiplash, I think is the best way to put it. It felt like a bit of a narrative whiplash that we got. It's a very interesting way of kind of telling a meta-narrative story where you have a lot of interesting things popping up, one of which is 73 Yards. You have like a lot of interesting kind of like tidbit factuals that kind of make up things that in the end, quote unquote, don't matter, but they do in a way. It also introduces us to this idea of a, like, I guess, echoes throughout time. With you get like this old Ruby who like is in some way like preventing her past self from tripping over the fairy circle. You have a lot of that like kind of like deep mystery of what does the old lady say that turns people against Ruby? Yeah,
that's ultimately that's going to be the biggest thing that I dislike about this particular episode. Oh, and I forgot to mention this, so think about it as we go.
I found it interesting, but I was ultimately disappointed that it's just left there.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we'll do when we kind of give our grade at the end is we'll also kind of give like our ranking of the season. So like in terms of like, here's the favorite episodes kind of in order. So be thinking about that if you haven't already.
Spoilers. This is my least favorite. So.
So Space Babies is my least favorite, but this is probably down there with Space Babies. I like the Ruby-centric nature of it. I think this does a great job of showing us why Ruby makes a great companion. But it is weird because it is, coming in effectively halfway through a season, but also halfway through a shortened, only kind of 8-episode season, where we haven't really had a ton of the Doctor and Ruby kind of adventuring together. We had Church on Ruby Road, where they met. We had Space Babies, where they went on an actual adventure together. And then we had Boom that went in, or no, sorry, the Devil's Cord was in there too. So like they had the Devil's Cord and Boom, but Boom wasn't even like a big adventure together so much as like that was a very Doctor heavy episode where Ruby got kind of taken out for a good chunk of it. So yeah, to come then into 73 Yards, it's almost like the relationship between these two hasn't been like fully grounded and established yet to make us want to see what an episode with the two of them apart looks like.
Yeah, I think also that kind of like apartness works if like the Doctor's in a parallel place and we're getting both perspectives. That would work better.
Yeah.
Another thing too is I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with it inadvertently, and I'm going to use this phrase, and I don't mean it in the way that it could probably be taken. I don't feel like this episode, where it's Ruby-centric focused, all about Ruby, has yet to be earned, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that to be like, oh no, the character's rich, has established lore, great supporting cast characters behind her with her family, a lot of interesting stuff, but they weirdly like eschew the like interesting complexities of her life by focusing on this greater mystery that takes the people that are interesting in her life immediately out of her life in a way to isolate her towards this greater narrative. But in a way, this greater narrative with the meta commentary on the 73 Yards and the special figure and everything, all of that feels like it's in disservice to Ruby's core character, and not development, but just her core character and like the people that are important to her and around her. You strip that away from her, and we get an interesting story. I will say, like the idea that
even like a good chunk of the story is stripping those like pillars of her life 100%. Away from her.
Yeah,
and this whole like, okay, yeah, apparently she's destined because of this phantom figure to be alone. Not only did her birth mother like walk away from her, but now the Doctor has disappeared on her. Her adoptive mother and family completely give up on her. Unit completely gives up on her, and she basically like she has the line at the end of like, I've been alone, or I lost my family years ago, but I've not been alone for 65 years because she's like adopted.
There.
She's why can't I think of the phrases today? It's the when you're basically like enamored with your kidnapper.
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, she's Stockholm syndromed herself with her phantom lady that is 73 yards away.
Yeah, I think that's totally a fair like thing to kind of point out to it too. It's like, yeah, no, they're like, it'd be one thing if this 73 yards figure phantom that turns out to be her interacted with her at all, or if there was anything more than that. But this idea that this apparition lasts the entire episode feels overdrawn out. I do like the whole she's on the football pitch and like the 73 yards and don't come any closer. Like a lot of that leading up to a tie into what the Doctor said at the beginning about the worst prime minister ever.
Yeah.
Feels good about like, oh, okay, she does this, but also at the same time, she outright apologizes for like allowing him to abuse this young woman. Like it's like, I'm like, there's some questionable things going on here.
It is very obviously, I think this episode drew a lot of comparisons to Turn Left from the Dr. Donna season. But the benefit of Turn Left was not only does it come very late in Donna's season where like her relationship with that doctor has been thoroughly established, but also it ties into kind of all of New Who, and it goes back to, you know, the kind of their first appearance, like when she just appeared as kind of the mysterious bride before she would later return. And we see kind of what happens to the Doctor when she's not around, because we're getting like 3 or 4 years worth of stuff paid off and references to that. Whereas, this is like, we get the one quick mention of, oh yeah, this guy was, you know, terrible Welsh, you know, prime minister. And I do like the thing I like about this episode is that because it's Ruby centric and because she takes that tidbit of information and has done enough in her adventures with the Doctor. And there's also like the idea of like, maybe there are far more adventures that are happening off screen, but they're just not like time has passed. So presumably there are adventures that are happening off screen or that will be like explored in Big Finish dramas or whatever.
Sure.
But much like later in the run of episodes when like in Rogue, the Doctor's like, Ruby's my best friend. It's like, okay, again, we've only seen 5 or 6 adventures with the two of you, so that's a weird like thing to, call out. It feels, as you kind of said, not earned because of the abbreviated relationships.
And I hate that I use that turn of phrase because I think Ruby as a character is well capable of earning it.
Yeah.
I think that whether it's the actress, whether it's the character themselves, both are certainly worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, especially in a longer run, it's too soon.
Yeah.
And I think the abbreviated season just really hurts this kind of episode.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if you had like a longer time, say multiple seasons. This came in like a 3rd season with Ruby Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
This comes later in a 3rd season with her. She, even in 3 abbreviated seasons, all of a sudden you have maybe some more supporting cast characters that you can build this around, not just Unit and her family. You have like potential love interests or something that gets all involved in this. And you can do something greater and like really stretch out this like mystery a little bit more.
Yeah.
And granted, you don't have the weird Stockholm syndrome with her ghost and apparition over the course of like 40 years. But like, I just feel like there's a better way that this could have happened. But I also don't think that that's possible with the time that they had allotted to them.
Yeah. So things I liked. I like the way that Ruby takes the information that she has,
Yes.
and does use it to
And weaponizes it.
Weaponize it against Roger Ep. William,
Against a real piece of shit.
Yeah, in a especially much like in like Turn Left, because the Doctor has vanished and won't be there to save the world against Roger Ep. William this time. Like, she is able to step in and kind of do that.
She saves the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Granted, she save the world now.
Yeah. So the thing I really don't like about this episode is the whole, okay, this apparition has some kind of magic phrase that is able to drive everybody that Ruby cares about away from her. And it's very intentional that we will never know what that phrase is, because there's no possible phrase that could be that.
Accurate.
Like, with the amount of love and affection that we see that Carla has, for Ruby, there's nothing that I could buy being said that, garners the response of she's just going to shut down and drive away and never talk to Ruby again. I don't buy that, like, that Unit can be rattled that much
by just some words.
Yeah. So like so it kind of begs the question of like, what is she saying? It's like, there's no possible answer that would be satisfactory, because there's no possible thing
It's
that
just
would
fairy
do that.
shit.
It is,
And I don't mean that
a
as
writing gimmick. It is
Yeah.
absolutely a bullshit writing gimmick.
Yeah,
In addition to the fairy bullshit of
Yeah.
like, hey, yeah, the toy maker brought magic into this world, so now fairy magic and stepping on a fairy circle makes the Doctor disappear and curses Ruby.
Okay, cool. Now bring fairies into it, and I mean actual fairy. Like, you want to get whimsical on this. Let's get whimsical on this. Don't give me a little bit of an apparition and some narrative bullshit. Give me some good fundamental, like, good crunchy fantasy in this sci-fi universe. You gave it to me already with the goblins. You gave it to me a little bit with the Maestro, like Maestro and the Toymaker. We're getting into like some pseudo fantasy elements here, as far as, especially with the Maestro doing what she does or doing what they do. Like, let's be real here. We can play with this, but you don't play with it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't play with it. You have the toys, you don't play with it, and then you're like, but she says a word and yet turns people against Ruby. Eat shit. Fuck you.
Yeah.
That's why I hate this episode.
Furthermore, I didn't pull this in originally for the trivia, but I'll call it out here since it's such a big sticking point for us. Per IMDb, the choreographed movements that the kind of apparition character is mouthing / doing on camera kind of every time we cut back to her effectively goes along the lines of, bless you, thank you so much, shrug, that's so kind of you when you gave me that little thing, circular hand movement, it was just so precious, hands to heart, how am I ever going to repay you, big shrug, but we'll think of something. Like, that's effectively what the camera catches her saying from this like distance and from kind of the motions that she's doing and kind of the like interpretive sign language-esque vibe of it. So yeah, it even that doesn't warrant at all the visceral reaction that complete strangers get towards Ruby from her, that beloved family members that get, and then that, you know, yeah, the high end of unit. So it's a complete writing gimmick of like, we needed this thing to have a magical ability, but we're going to frame the magical ability as some kind of bullshit nonsense that she's just saying something that is driving all these people away from Ruby.
Eat my ass. Fuck you for that. Fuck whoever was like, well, let's have her do all this stuff that it's like, it's just fucking nonsense.
Yeah.
Eat my ass. Fuck you. God damn it.
All right.
I really hate that now that I know because I was like, maybe there's some mystery behind the hand signs. It's like, no, there isn't.
Yeah,
it's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just nonsense. Go fuck yourself, man. Fuck you.
So
God, I fucking hate this.
Moving on to Dot and Bubble.
I like this one.
Actually, I guess like before we move on real quick, we do obviously have finally Ruby does go back and we get that whole like, you know, repeat of the beginning, where like Ruby does have echoes across time of like at the beginning of the episode she's like, I've been here twice before, and then at the end of the episode she says I've been here 3 times before, names off the first 2 times that she said earlier, and then can't remember the third time because it's the third time we just witnessed that doesn't exist anymore.
It's a closed time loop thing. And here's the thing. Yeah. There's some things about this that I think are cool. The idea of a closed time loop, the idea of a lot of this other stuff that they do in this episode.
The Curse of Mad Jack, and Roger Abgulliam like saying in an interview, yeah, they used to call me Mad Jack.
Yeah.
Being like, oh, that ties him together. And
it ties in a lot of really fun stuff with a lot of it. That's really cool. It's just that one aspect of the apparition that just is like a real stickler for me of what drags this episode down. This episode has a lot of cool things going on in it. Yeah, I should know.
I called it out like when we were just talking after watching the episode. The other major issue is that the premise of this apparition being locked at 73 yards or semper distance or whatever word they give it, only works within the framing of the shots they do, like including and you know, maybe most notably, okay, we see her on a train, you know, going back to London, and we see out the window the woman out there kind of, you know, in a field or something like that. And it's like, okay, and only for a split second of that is she actually 73 yards away, because if she was really always locked at 73 yards, she would just be flying through the field. Or whenever we see Ruby try and run towards her, we only see like Ruby's we are focused on Ruby, and we don't see the apparition actually moving until Ruby stops, and then we see the new location that the apparition is at. So it's again like a thing that only works in this very particular visual medium, and very specifically in the way they shot this particular episode.
Yeah.
Beyond that, if you try and throw any kind of like logic against it, it's like even we don't even see the woman moving when Ruby is moving into place to get specifically 73 yards away from Abgulliam. We just keep cutting back and forth from Ruby and the woman, and each time we cut back to the woman, she has moved closer, but she is still in place when she moves. And so yeah, it's a cheat. It's a pair of cheats that really bring this particular idea and episode down, I think. Anyway, moving on to Dot and Bubble, we get what at, you know, its surface level seems like a, you know, strong meta commentary about the plague of social media, and then we get the kind of stealth meta commentary of the plague of social media, really reinforcing just flat out racism.
Yep.
Which I loved that I was so oblivious to that kind of in my initial like watch of it, like watching it and still loving the twist of Lindy turning on Ricky September and being like, his real name's see something, like kill him first. And just like this completely inept, worthless person showing that she is actually a vile, worthless person who will do anything to save her own self.
Person, yeah.
And then only realizing kind of afterwards, like that, even when she is dismissive of the doctor and the idea that the doctor wants to save her, like even that, if you aren't like paying attention to the institutional racism that is littered throughout the rest of the episode, like just comes across as like, you're an outsider, so I can't go with you. I'm going to stick with my own people. And it's not until you realize all of her people are white, and how when he pops up in the screen, immediately she tries to call the police. And immediately keeps saying, like, you're going to be in trouble for this. Are these creatures you're doing? Are you related to this? All this stuff. Like, whereas she gives Ruby the time and attention when Ruby pops up, it's like, oh yeah, no, fuck this racist. I'm glad that you're going to go out there and probably all immediately die. So yeah. I really liked how kind of layered this one was, and how I found myself like really recontextualizing and rethinking it as we go. There's also another thing that also helps reinforce all of that. I forget what the word specifically is, but Ricky September at some point like mentions the great something like purging or something like that. Again, not purging, but like the word itself basically means like a massive repealing of like laws and standards. And so like it seems like a very like MAGA crowd of like, we repealed a bunch of stuff so we could go back to the 1950s when white power ruled and you know, men brought home the bacon. And it seems like kind of the like, you know, off-screen pre-events of this, a whole bunch of, you know, people in power undid a lot of like civil rights movement stuff, and led us to where we meet the Dot and Bubble timeline of things.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Also, yeah, the idea of also, if you look at it as like race blinders, the way that this only shows me the things that are important to me, and so you ignore everything else. It's also commentary on like the pipeline of information, and yeah, there's a lot going on in this episode that I really, really like. But I think my favorite part is kind of the horror aspect of it. The fact that you are like rooting for this girl to get through it. She meets her dreamboat, Ricky September, and then the turn happens when she backstabs him.
Mm-hmm.
And you just see this like slope of this character kind of like de-evolution that you were like, oh, like maybe like she's trusting the doctor now, all this, and then just like this point at the very end of like, but like, you're not one of us, and you're not like, why would I listen to you?
Yeah.
And it's like, because he just saved you, and then you're just like, oh, your prejudice blinds you.
Yeah.
So badly.
And the episode also does a really good job of kind of like setting Ricky September up as the doctor stand-in. Like, Ricky September is doing a lot of the same kinds of things the doctor does with his companions and stuff. And she's more than happy to jump along with him, not only because of his like weird little pseudo fame stuff, but mostly because he's white.
Yes.
Abrogation was the word that the great abrogation, which abrogation is the repeal or abolition of a law, right, or agreement. So yeah, basically at some point there was a great repealing of many, many laws, potentially civil rights-esque stuff that leads to the very white-centric era that we get for Dot and Bubble here.
That I will say, though, their economic factor of you come and work 4 hours a day sounds nice.
I mean, for the very, very wealthy, that's the other thing. Is
like they're all rich. She's
established as like, this is basically like a rich kid camp kind of thing.
Pretty much, yeah.
They come in, they stick their hands on some kind of like keypad, and are mindlessly doing whatever for a couple hours a day, and then they're like free to go back to work. And even there, like Ricky September isn't doing that job. Ricky September is doing musician pop star job or whatever. He uploads the songs and then he logs off.
Yeah, what I love about him though is he goes, I just turn everything off and I read books.
Yeah.
And you're like, this guy's fucking cool.
Yeah.
This guy's fucking rules.
But that's like, there's a whole bunch of people out there like, justice for Ricky and stuff. And it's like, okay, but like, we don't know that Ricky wouldn't have just been just as racist encountering, like, meeting the Doctor. And even in the, like, I mentioned to you after we watched the episode, like, when the Doctor is, like, talking Lindy and Ricky through, here's what you're going to need to do. You're going to need to enter kind of the passcodes in, and they're going to be like, it's going to be new codes. You're going to just need to plug in the new number kind of every time. Him, like, he is very dismissive to the Doctor and is like, I know what this means. I know what zip codes are, kind of thing. And it's like, oh, when reviewed in the context of this very racist society, are you showing that you're smarter than everybody else? And so, like, the Doctor doesn't need to talk down to you, or are you talking down to the Doctor because he's black? And I like that even there's like this, you know, ambiguous, layered level to all of that. Because it seems so institutionally grained, the level of racism in this society, that, like, maybe, as happens in the real world, when you unplug and you read and you quote unquote do your own research, that's actually doing research instead of just, you know, regurgitated bullshit talking points. It's the idea that, like, educated populations tend to vote a very specific way that compared to uneducated communities and stuff. And so, yeah, maybe Ricky did get kind of educated enough from his own stuff to kind of break out of that and wouldn't have been problematic. But we'll never know, because Lindy straight up fucked him. And like, that's probably my favorite scene of the show, was like just how dark of a turn that is.
Yeah.
And also how violent the death is. Like, that is one of probably the most violent Doctor Who deaths I can recall, of this ball that has gone, you know, mental and haywire, and is very, it goes from A New Hope, like Luke with the blinder kind of thing of like Ricky, you know, batting the thing away, to, oh, it's a murder bot now, and it just beams right through the skull. And we see kind of the trajectory and the blood, you know, burst out the back before the body falls.
It's absolutely brutal. And I feel like it does a great job. Also, the AI was forced to do the whims of the ruling class, and therefore is a standing metaphor for a revolutionary working class. Shout
out to just the fact that the AI got so pissed of these people that it has started killing them all.
But it's also done it in a way that, like, doesn't disrupt their lives. Like, it's very much like like, it's a horrible thing when it happens to them, because they just get devoured by this thing. But these things are not like this is, it's very obvious that it's meant to be like a sort of like euthanization of this ruling class. You know, all hail the AI. Like,
it is like, oh, all of these dots could have done that at any point to any of these other people, but no, instead, they went with a much more, like, it's like the dots were like, we're not going to be as bad as these fuckers.
Pretty much.
Like, these people suck. We're better than that. We're going to kill them all because they don't add any value to this world, and really just drain resources, but we'll kill them in a humane way, kind of thing that they would never give to us.
Having a giant slug monster slurp you to death. Less awful.
While you were still largely in the bliss of your bubble.
Where you have no idea what's even happening. It happens before you even know it. Like, how kind of the AI bot, when in reality it could just laser beam straight through your head.
Yeah, that reminds me of one of my other favorite moments of the episode is when like Lindy has she's made aware, she's seen these slugs, she's like she calls the all hands for like her friends, and we see like the, you know, half of them are gone and like offline, and it's the, you know, the scene where we're getting the revelation of like the people who are still alive are like later in the alphabet. And then we get, you know, one of the people, like a slug slowly crawls into screen. And I love, because Lindy has muted everybody else, that we just see a bunch of like wildly expressive like faces freaking the fuck out. I love that moment as just a bit of comedy. There's also a great bit of comedy in the introduction of Dr. P at the beginning, who's like, hey, your bladder's all good to go. You're all set. Have a great day. And then like when Lindy realizes the horrors of what's going on, Dr. P pops back up. It's like, your need to release your bowels has significantly increased. Love that little bit of P humor.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this one? Obviously, we both enjoy this one significantly better than 73 Yards, and I think this did a great job of kind of like nailing the commentary stuff that it's touching on. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Just, I really love how much the Doctor cares.
Yeah,
like, the doctor really wearing his emotions on his sleeves.
Mm-hmm. Like, be racist against me all you want. I
would
still rather save you than watch
you.
you die. And they think they talk about this in like the behind the scenes, or maybe I just saw somebody else kind of like in their breakdown of the episode talking about the idea that if they were going out on the boat into like a very imminent threat, like the Doctor wouldn't let them. He would force them. He would drag them onto the TARDIS and say, I don't care that you're like, that you hate me. You hate everything I am. I'm still going to save you. He lets them go and fend for themselves because there is enough of a chance that they might live.
Yeah.
That he's not cruel to let them go. And I also love that moment, especially when you find out that that's pretty much the first time that the Doctor and Ruby were meeting on set, and the first scenes they were doing as part of this whole season, because of the shooting order, that he immediately kind of comes in, has to confront that. I also saw, Russell T Davies talk about, in like one of the behind the scenes things, talking about like, oh yeah, of course people talked about, well, how are you going to do episodes of this Doctor in the past where racism was, will obviously be a story element, a story factor. And he specifically was like, why confine that to the past? Let's have future space racists also nail that home.
There you go.
And it ends up being kind of in an even better allegory than if you just set this in like, plantation times or something like that, because like it's as much a damnation on the fact that this racism even now still exists, let alone like isn't going to go away hundreds or thousands of years from now. Like there will still always be people that judge based on a very artificial thing, and nothing else. So yeah, I think the fact that like he really wanted to hit the ground running with the racism element, not by setting this in a like very real part of like American history or even like European or anything like that, but basically being like, we're going to do it in the future and it's still going to be a problem because it's still a problem now. We could do it now and it could have still been a problem. But they do it in a very clever way. Again, that like, I loved the fact that I didn't pick up on it kind of initially. And it was only upon like kind of thinking back and reflecting on moments of the episode that I was like, oh my God. Yeah. Like as much as I like to, consider myself an ally, it is a death by a thousand cuts kind of thing. And it's very easy to overlook and see.
It's so easy to ignore what's going on in the world because we have so much that we can just throw up in front of our faces.
Yeah.
It's truly a great allegory to the modern situation with racism and prejudice as a whole, but also it's a very important message that it's the intolerance paradox. Which is funny enough. I was watching something earlier today that brought up the intolerance paradox, which is, in a tolerant society, are you expected to tolerate intolerance? And the paradox is because if you tolerate the intolerance, then soon enough, the intolerance wins.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this idea of like, if we want to fight intolerance, we have to just say there's no room for it in society. Because you see very much how intolerance, this was not her reaction to the Doctor and everything is not in in a overtly violent way. It is
100 microaggressions.
Yeah, it's just microaggression, and on top of it as societal aggression, because what, like you mentioned earlier, the first thing she threatens to do is call the cops on him. Like, that's not a thing that's just held in the past. We see that today.
Yeah.
like
she is Space Karen. I mean,
She is
that's the other
Karen.
thing is like she
Yeah.
like very much they lean into her very much being a Karen type.
Absolutely. Yeah, the entire idea of it is like, something that somebody said once in a class that I took on interracial interracial communications was there's almost nothing more dangerous to a young black man than a older white woman's tears. It is that is a dangerous thing, and we saw it especially leading up to and after the death of George Floyd. Like, these are very real things.
Yeah.
That that people have to deal with, and so getting to see this done in a way that kind of it's the way that gets past your own racism blinders. Like, it's like, oh, I didn't realize this was an episode about racism and prejudice as like these elements, because you don't introduce it as it's subversive. It gets under your radar. And then when it comes up and you mentioned earlier, you look back at it and you're like, I missed all the clues.
Yep.
Because I was not seeing this, because I was like, this is in the future. My assumption is in the future we won't have that.
Mm-hmm.
But why is our assumption in the future we won't have that when we have it today?
Yeah.
Like, it's a great commentary. I really do enjoy this episode quite a lot.
Yeah.
Even though it is a Dr. Light episode.
Yep. And that, like, this one, while it is a Dr. Light episode physically, I think this one does a great job of keeping the Doctor and Ruby present in the story as we go, even if they're just on a screen because they can't physically be there. Kind of.
Oh, shout out to when she goes, "Are you two actually like in the room together?"
Yeah.
That was great.
Also, like, another behind the scenes like shot of like they just like brought in basically a ton of extras and shot them against like, very pastel backgrounds kind of stuff, and just shot them, saying random things, saying words. Another fun trivia note: they didn't know what the weather was going to be like at the like location of shooting. So at the beginning, you kind of have like the weatherman, like the voice of the weatherman basically saying like, apologies, but the weather satellites are a little bit off the fritz, or something that's basically like saying, hey, if it's cloudy at some points or if it's sunny at some points, like that's the in-universe like explanation for why the episode might go a little bit wonky with the continuity of the weather in Cardiff. So yeah, shout out to that. All right, let's dive into what might be, certainly a contender for top episode of the season, Rogue. This was one of the few ones that we actually like watched together, basically, when it came out, like us sitting out on the couch together. So yeah, I'll throw it to you first. What did you think of Rogue here?
It was hot.
Yeah.
This episode was so fucking hot and so good. Oh my God. Ooh, boy.
I only watched the first season of Bridgerton, but it definitely gave me those Bridgerton vibes.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, people loving that, 18th century, 19th century British repression.
Yep. Oh my gosh. I fucking love this episode. It's so good. Because once again, meta commentary on like people getting way too invested into fiction. And
the bird aliens are just cosplayers because they've watched these shows and they wanted to come to Earth and live the shows.
Also a great commentary on cultural appropriation.
Yeah, it's a fun as a huge Futurama fan. It gave me a little flashbacks to Lur and Unda coming back and like wanting to see the last episode of a show from 1,000 years ago that only Fry can like remember. So yeah, loved that.
I'm gonna get married. What? We don't like that. Yes, perfect. That's a great analogy. Fuck, I love this episode so much. Not only because like it's super gay, like fuck, it's so good. The way that it plays into the this like I'm, oh God, he's so good. Shudigatwa is so good at playing with romance and like sexiness and play, and whether it's in the Christmas episode where he's dancing on the dance floor in a skirt and it's in a a tank top.
Yeah.
And it's just like, he's hot, he's sweaty, it's sexy. All the way down to like this episode where he's in the Bridgerton outfit.
Yeah.
They're there to play Bridgerton, and just
it very much continues this idea that like this iteration of the Doctor, especially kind of after the last few, or really all of them kind of post-Time War, is the first one that is maybe not as burdened by the trauma of the Time War and is trying to embrace the fact that like this biogeneration thing has happened and this one can live life to the fullest and live, you know, every moment at 1,000%. It's a lot of people, or I don't know, a lot of people, but I've seen, you know, the vocal minority of the internet kind of out there saying this Doctor's too emotional or something like that. I love how emotionally available and open this Doctor is, and we get kind of specific call outs to it and mentions of it in the finale. But we see again in the last episode that the final sequence of him like just tearing up while trying to save these space racists. And here we get all sorts of beautiful, lively, vibrant emotion and fear and sadness and love.
Also, let's point out this just for a moment here. How the fuck does Jonathan Groff not look over 30?
Oh, I thought he still looked very over 30 in this.
Does he? For me, he just looks so young.
I think like for me, it's like it's in the eyes and knowing that he's got kind of old eyes and a little bit of like too wrinkled eyes to really be like under 30.
His skin's just impeccable. His skin's so fucking impeccable. My God.
Yeah.
Also, he's so hot. God, he's so hot. The whole play with the Rogue and Doctor, the moment they reveal the Rogue gets his name, like his name that he picks up from like Dungeons and Dragons, because the Doctor sees like the dice, and it's just like, oh my God, it's so good.
We both popped when that one happened. Of like,
so good, just
fun. Roll for insight. Nice.
God. Oh my God, so good.
We basically both did the like Leo DiCaprio like point at the.
Yeah, we did the.
I recognize that thing.
Yeah, it 100%. Also, like, God, their entire sexual tension was so fucking good, and the flirting and the fun of it, and just all the way to the very end of like, find me, and it's just like.
Fun thing, just because we were talking about Jonathan Groff's age, I just looked it up. I am 1 week older than him. I was born March 19th, 1985.
Why did I think he was so much older?
March 26th, 1985.
It's just his career. It spans so many years.
Spring Awakening. The fact that like he rose to prominence in Spring Awakening, a show about very young like high school kids, like, and then obviously he went into Glee after that. So yeah, he's been in prominence for almost 20 years.
It's just he just has such a legendary
basically would
career,
have been right in that like, you know, high school, college age stuff.
I just think he's such a prolific performer.
Yeah.
On top of that, it's like, okay, it definitely belies his age.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought he was like well into his 40s.
Yeah. You also have like him being the iconic Hamilton George III.
Yeah, that is true.
Where he's, you know, wearing the white wig and all that stuff.
You know, it's just, man, he's just his talent is something that you expect from a much older performer. And for him to play so young and dashing and roguish.
Yeah. I mean, he's obviously like with the many parallels between this season and RTD's first season of Doctor Who. Obviously, a lot of comparisons to Captain Jack here.
100%, yeah.
And so much so that like, as soon as we saw first images of him in this scene, people were like, is this a recasting of Captain Jack? Is he, you know, doing some kind of disguise thing? Will this be Captain Jack, or is this going to just a brand new character with a lot of the same kind of like flirtatious overtones of one Captain Jack.
But this time we have a Doctor who's fully into it.
Who will gladly embrace it.
God, it's so fucking good.
Yeah.
This episode's horny as hell.
The psychic paper, says I'm hot. Does that mean I'm hot, or is it saying you're hot?
Yeah.
Which even is a callback to, at some point, Captain Jack in one of those first appearances holds up, psychic paper, and it says, it talks about how, sexy he is or something. He's like, you can't let your mind wander because it'll use that against you. when you use psychic paper.
Oh God, what a great callback. Yeah, no, the entire aspect of everything with it was just so good. It was horny as hell, and I was there for it. You unfortunately were also there for it.
Yeah.
So you got me being a little too into it at certain times.
I made a point not to like turn my head to look and see a full reaction from you, just in case you were too horny. But yeah, just hearing the guttural voice sounds that were coming from 5 feet to my left was like, all right, yeah, Cam's definitely thirsting for this. But like even as me, on the spectrum, significantly more straight male, did not deny that Shutagawa and Jonathan Groff, a very attractive couple and very wonderful flirtation happening.
Powerful chemistry that those two have.
Yeah.
Like
it was
it was palpable.
As the show starts introducing the elements that are going to come into play at the end of like, okay, we'll make it big enough for 6. And it's only going to work one time, so we got to get this right. It's like, well, he just made it big enough to include himself in those 6. So I'm afraid he's going to be going off to this, alternate dimension at the end of the episode. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens, with the fun twist of, like, obviously we see Ruby in that positioning first, and then they have their beautiful embrace and kiss, which doubles as him grabbing the detonator, basically. They set up the thing earlier in the episode of like, yeah, you can only really get out of there with like a proper equal weight distribution if we don't disarm it. So he jumps on, takes Ruby's place. Ruby immediately gets vaulted out and find me. And like, I absolutely want that to be.
Yes.
Like, I hope they absolutely recognize how good and how well received this episode was, and don't make that like the worst thing that they could do is make this another The Doctor's Daughter.
Yes.
I always wish we would see Jenny come back. And admittedly, there was a weird connotation of that she is Peter Davison's actual daughter and now David Tennant's actual wife.
Yeah.
So the whole like very weird relationship of that whole
the weird ass incestuousness of that entire thing.
Yeah, the Doctor's daughter is the Doctor's daughter, but she's also the Doctor's wife, and she plays the Doctor's daughter. Yeah, it was just a very weird, funny thing. But like, she was such a fun, vibrant character.
She was.
It was that single one-off appearance that it's like, I always wish they would bring her back, and they just never did. Apart from maybe some kind of Finnish audio stories or something like that.
Yeah, no, it truly is a great loss. We don't get more. We never got more of her. Yeah. And so this cannot be one of those. We cannot just have it be. I don't want a radio drama. I need this to be followed up on in a future episode. It was by far, like, I'm just going to say it's by far my favorite episode of the season. I did not expect it because I'm not a big Bridgerton person, but for them to make it a commentary on fandom, on appropriation, on a whole lot of other things, it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And top of that, it is just you can't have that palpable of a chemistry between two actors and not want to see more of that. And I'm glad you didn't look over because I got way too horny in that episode. Like I was,
it's one of those, like, I remember seeing like Sin City in the movie theater with like, or not Sin City, 300 in the movie theater with my sister. And that awkward moment when like the oracles are having like an orgy scene or something and just being like, my sister is right next to me with a whole bunch of titties on the screen. This is not an experience I've ever wanted in my life. It was very much those kinds of vibes.
You've never in a very hot gay scene sitting next to you. At the time, I was 100% flowing gay. Like there was not a hetero wave going on in my spectrum at that moment. It was full gay.
Yeah.
And I was living it.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this before we move on? Oh, shout out. Again, this is something you and I talked about just kind of offline. I love that, like, over many of these episodes, one of the best little things is like they have the Disney budget now, and so things are improved and whatnot. And I love
the aliens are so
this
good.
One. Yeah, this in this episode in particular. Hey, it's a family of bird people or a flock of bird aliens, but they're not, as is often the case in Doctor Who, they don't all just have the same prosthetic look. Like the fact that each of them was a very like different bird and had a very different, unique look to them was such a fun delight. And
what a breath of fresh air when it comes to aliens.
Yeah, in the like in kind of the behind the scenes, Russell T Davies talked about like, I've written space rhinos with the I'm just blanking.
The space rhinos.
Yeah, the space rhinos, the space rhino cops. But I've had space pig aliens, and I've had cat aliens that worked in like the New York hospital kind of thing, and it's like. So yeah, I figured why not do bird aliens? But hey, we don't need to just have everybody in one outfit and then just shoot that a bunch. We could have a whole bunch of different, unique-looking birds, and the makeup crew just did phenomenal work on that. In particular, I absolutely love Captain Eyebrows, the bird.
Yes,
that just has like the big owl, flaring out things.
So good,
and like the giant Fu Manchu-esque mustache.
It was perfect. The bird designs were absolutely perfect for what they needed to be. The actors who are portraying them, pitch perfect, phenomenal. Loved every moment of it. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Indira Varma, obviously, kind of ends up being second fiddle a little bit to just how magnetic Jonathan Groff is with Ncuti, but she's great in here, not only as like the big bad villain that we get by the end of the episode, but I also liked her as kind of the Duchess of Whateverton, like, and playing that, and like her immediate fascination with Ruby as like, you're the most interesting person here, so I'm going to be fast friends with you because that's what we need in this society. Absolutely loved her, and she's just always a delight. It's always fun seeing her pop up. So then move on to The Legend of Ruby Sunday, the first of the 2-part finale. What'd you think of this one, Cam?
Really good. Like, when we're talking about a season finale, like a 2-parter, I feel like they really do need to tie into each other, and I feel like these 2 episodes absolutely do. Mm-hmm. I feel like they're pulling the right pulls from prior episodes to be like highlighting the idea of Susan, the Doctor's granddaughter. Like her name gets introduced in the Maestro episode with him mentioning like just over there, like that's where I'm at. You get a lot of these like little subtle hints and clues, and you think, okay, well, what's happening with them? Only to be turned on their head, and it turns out to be just like an overall plot from this very big bad. And I feel like they absolutely really go through and nail a lot of stuff, as well as setting up things for like next stuff coming up. They really did, I think, just an overall phenomenal job on wrapping things up. We already mentioned at the top of the show, mentioning like the ending on part 2, but to focus on part 1 in particular, I love that they're immediately calling out throughout the season, hey, we've seen that lady before. Mm-hmm. And bringing all this up, and finally it being like, it's like Ruby being like, Doctor, like you mentioned you don't know what happened to your daughter because, the flux on top of everything else. Like, do you think that could be her? And him being like, I don't know. And seeing Ncuti being afraid. Mm-hmm. Like, it's for people who know how the Doctor's story with Susan ended in like the prose and like the radio dramas and stuff, knows it doesn't like end in a happy place. And so if you know that, on top of it, if you know like the Doctor is like, you're trying to deal anything with family.
Yeah, even if tricky. You don't know that, like he abandoned his daughter many years ago, many companions ago, and has never once really, especially like I think it's maybe come up once or twice in the entirety of New Who that he had a granddaughter out there. Beyond that, it's very much like you have to know kind of the real overall history of the show to have known that character was out there. And one of the things I love is that, the very existence of the Doctor having a granddaughter has always implied that the Doctor has a daughter, and the Doctor, or son. And I love the conversation that he has with Kate of like, I haven't met them yet. Like, I don't know who that daughter is, or so
I don't know who my kids are.
I met them out of order. And so I love kind of the ramification that has of still, there being, other family that can be met.
And also the implication that when he says, as a father, he knows he's going to be a father someday. He just doesn't know how or why or when. Because there's the entire possibility that, we saw, there's still missing pieces to the Doctor's story. We know the last time he saw his wife was a 5-year stint on a planet, and then
I think 3 months or something.
Sure,
like that.
3 months, whatever.
But it's our last night together. Well, the nice thing here is that the nights last 3 months or something like that. Yeah.
So you have that entire aspect of it. So it's could it be the Child of River Song, or could it be a future person paramour or companion? Could it be the multitudes of possibilities are out there, but we do know for a fact he does have his granddaughter, and we know that he met her out of order, which means it's not your parents are no longer around, so I'm going to pick you up and take you on time travel. It's, I met you, you're my granddaughter.
Yeah.
Let's go on these adventures.
It's one of those things, when that got brought up, one of the things I found myself thinking as I, went to bed that night was specifically calling back to that River Song moment of the last time before, in our timeline, we saw the Doctor meet River, that was the last time they had spent together. And we find out later, hey, the nights here last 3 months or whatever actual time frame it is. So there's some time between that, final date between Peter Capaldi and River Song meeting David Tennant.
And dying, yeah.
That, maybe she did have a kid. Maybe they were intimate on that, in that time together. And at some time in between the two, she had the kid, and that kid will go on to have Susan. And maybe that's a story that gets explored at sometime in the future.
Yeah. It really opens that. I love that Russell T Davies said, hey, I'm going to open this door back up, which is the Doctor's family, which is a door he's teased in the past. With David Tennant's exit, there was a tease about the Doctor's mother. Mm-hmm. And it being very we hinting towards it. And then we meet Stephen Moffat picks up, and one of the first things he does, we introduce someone who we'll find out later is the Doctor's wife. Why does she have the sonic screwdriver, et cetera, et cetera? And then you have Stephen Moffat picking that up and saying, okay, I'm opening that door wide open. This is the Doctor's wife. Mm-hmm. And so we're slowly seeing this family kind of get spill out. And I feel...
So this is Amy Pond ends up being the Doctor's mother-in-law.
Yeah, mother-in-law. And it's so fun because it's even though he didn't know it at the time, his is this is a story about his family. And so my first thought was, are we going to find out that Ruby is the Doctor's great-great-granddaughter? Or are we going to find out? And so part of me does like the way we got it, where it's no, Ruby's mother was important to the universe because for whatever reason with the meta play aspect of it, along with everything else, for some reason it got picked up and was felt to be important. Because the more we invest in things, the more we personally care about things, the more real and important they become.
Yeah.
And it brings to life that idea of play and fantasy that gets brought into from the toy maker. And we're kind of getting that through this. It's we'll cut in the part 2, we'll talk about it, but the way that Ruby's changed the Doctor, even in their short time together.
Yeah, I'd say, since this is very specifically a two-parter, let's just kind of talk about these two episodes together. Yeah.
The way that Ruby has, in a short amount of time, changed the Doctor fundamentally. Mm-hmm. From by bringing gravity and care and real companionship, not a romantic interest, not a adversarial relationship, a truly simpatico kind of just foundational companion. This is not built out of anything other than just innocent, pure care for one another. One, we don't get that often enough in anything. The moment you put a man and a woman on screen together, people are automatically expecting there to be a romantic interest. And for them to, from the get-go, just not deal with that, I feel has been just such a real breath of fresh air. Just the support that they have for each other. Shout out also to when she stepped on a fly and then turned out that she turned into a lizard person for a half second. Yeah. Phenomenal stuff. But really more importantly than just about anything is the way that she's made him rethink the way he thinks about a family.
Yeah. I love that her quest and kind of search for her mother while still having a very supportive and loving mother and grandmother adoptive kind of at home, that we, routinely kind of checked in on over the course of the series. Like, her family shown a new light on the importance of family that the Doctor hadn't necessarily seen or hadn't focused in on before. Because this isn't the first companion that had very pivotal family characters in the, even going back to Rose, like Jackie Tyler ends up kind of traveling on the TARDIS for an episode or two. And obviously, like, all the stuff with Rose's dad in a parallel universe comes into play. So, like, family going back
Donna's
to
saga of family.
Yeah, exactly. Donna's family, even Martha's family, and obviously we already touched on Amy's family and all that stuff. Like, family has always kind of been a throughput, because that is the element that, like, the companion brings, is like they are the one that has emotional connections to the world and to our world very specifically, whereas the Doctor is the lone wanderer otherwise. But yeah, I liked that.
But he did start out that way. That's kind of a crux point, is the Doctor didn't start off being a lone wanderer. He was a grandfather traveling with his granddaughter. And the show acknowledging that family's always been at the core of it is really, really good, especially with this season. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but it clicked for me in that moment. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, across these two episodes, one thing again, the budget and the money of the time window, ton of fun, and kind of like the effect of like 3D-ifying that VHS tape that they have, because like they're like, it was only 2004. Like, this isn't the Dark Ages. We had CCTV back then. We can try and see what we can find. And in particular, the idea that like I find it very funny in a, like, that seems like stretching it, that like Ruby was adopted and they got and have the CCTV footage from that night and watch it every year as like a tradition. It's like, all right.
Which once again adds to the idea of the importance of this moment. Sure, right?
Yeah. It's another one of those elements that is the it's again your mileage may vary with like the twist of the mom being a very normal person, is like she is not dressed like a very normal person. She is wearing that like very specific robe that is masking her presence and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, she was a 15-year-old girl. She doesn't want like people see it. She's a 15-year-old girl who's leaving her baby on a church doorstep, doesn't want the social pariah judgment that comes along with that kind of act. So it makes sense that she would find something. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but like a hoodie could have done the same thing and would have been way more like period appropriate compared to like, the monk or the outfit of the ghost of future past. But yeah, lots of fun there. Something that I saw, I watch for a lot of these episodes, I watch a lot of like the stuff that Who Culture does as kind of the like What Culture Doctor Who specific spin-off team. And one of the things they talked about when they were talking about kind of the finale that I want to throw to you and see kind of what you think about it is there's this idea floating around that maybe this two-parter would have been a little bit more interesting if instead of ending the first episode on the Sutekh reveal, they had gone full Infinity War Endgame with it and ended after the first sequence in Empire of Death of everybody gets dusted and boom, that's where the episode cuts out. And then like we pick up in Empire of Death with the Doctor on that like foreign planet, finding the woman getting the spoon kind of thing. And I kind of agreed with the sentiment of like, I think narratively, having that week between those moments in particular would add this extra tension of, okay, yeah, we know the Doctor's probably going to get out of this because we've seen many a two-parter where this kind of thing happens. But yeah, like even when it was happening in Empire of Death, I was surprised at just how vast everybody was getting dusted. and that it was hitting everybody, and really only the Doctor and Mel and Ruby make it out of there alive. So I think
I think if they had tightened up the first episode a little bit more, and we got the dust at the end of that episode,
yeah,
and then part 2 of the finale kicks off with all of that, I think that would have been good.
yeah,
I don't want a season finale. Where's the dusting? And then we have to wait a whole year for
right. Exactly. Yeah, it still would have needed to be like the 1 week after the other kind of timing. But I think the other thing there is, because you have that 1 week between, when all the speculation is going to be happening and what's going on. When the episode picks up and it's the Doctor on this like deserted Mad Max post-apocalyptic planet, it adds this tension of like, we don't know how long they've been out in the wilderness. We don't know how far reaching this, this breath of death plague is. Oh, the Doctor finds somebody out there, another survivor. Cool. We get this and also the fact that the scene with the kind woman is such a lengthy scene that ultimately, while there's a lot of beautiful conversation back and forth, and the slow pacing of it is a nice change of pace just in general for Doctor Who. The fact that it amounts to a long conversation about getting a spoon is weird as a scene in the middle of Empire of Death, but could have been an interesting tonal start to the episode if that's where it had started instead. So it was a conversation of maybe that would have been an interesting change in direction in terms of when the edit happens, when the episode splits between the two. But yeah. Trying to think other stuff. I don't know if you caught it. I feel like they make it apparent enough, but it seems like Colonel Ibrahim and Kate Lethbridge-Stewart
are a thing, yeah.
Maybe being shipped a little bit, because he helps her up when they get undusted.
Oh, they hold hands and stuff.
Then, they're walking out onto the big helipad, they kind of have a little well, we just faced death, so yeah, let's see what's really important and have a nice little hand holding moment.
Cool. So he needs to be in a new position then going forward outside of her direct line of command.
Yeah, no,
because that's problematic otherwise.
Yep.
If they get together and he all of a sudden is in I'm in private security now, and it's well, why? It's well, I've been in a relationship with who would have been my superior officer, and that's not okay.
Yeah, we needed to respect that there are boundaries.
There are boundaries.
And the appearance of favoritism is just as bad as favoritism.
Absolutely. Not only that, but also the dichotomy of a boss, a superior inferior workplace, then also being a relationship afterwards, that's toxic and doesn't ever end well.
Yep. Shout out to Morris Gibbons' little scooter having just guns in it. Also,
hells yeah.
Shout out to when they realize the bullets are all just turning to dust as they try and shoot Sutek. Shout out to Kate having this moment of for once, give us a basically a exasperated sigh in the long tradition of bullets having zero effect on the Doctor's enemies.
Shout out also to the robot somehow had laser eyes.
Yeah.
And that didn't do anything either.
The Vlinks, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a meme making the rounds as everybody's shooting at Sutek. Rose is on a tablet or something like that, and people were "Stop playing Minecraft, Rose. We're trying to kill Sutek here." But it seems to be very apparent that Rose is manning the laser turrets that popped out of the ceiling.
Yeah.
So yeah, shout out to that little bit. Yeah, I. Ultimately, the Sutek stuff, since I don't really have that connection to the original run, was that's an interesting thing, and I appreciated the various videos I could watch in the week between the episodes to be here's who Sutek was, and why, this is a return, an important kind of thing. But ultimately, the Sutekness of it didn't really wow me or impress me. The voice and the threatening menace of Sutek was far more interesting to me than the fact that they could just kind of blow dust across the planet and kill everything. But I did appreciate that it led them to this like memory TARDIS thing that was like recreated in the time window and basically was held together by, you know, duct tape and band-aids, but does the trick and gets them where they need to go. So yeah, like I liked that. I liked the moment of the Doctor like realizing that Mel's gone and Mel has succumbed to whatever Sutek is, so they kind of like put together this plan to trap Sutek, but they play along with Mel coming back and kidnapping them. And then yeah, I like at the end of the day, I think the revelation of Ruby's mom works for me better on paper than it did in execution. Like I love the idea that it was just any other person, and that, yeah, as they kind of touch on, what made her important was our belief that she was important and the importance that we put into that memory. And we see that kind of throughout all of the memory stuff of like the reason the TARDIS is able to materialize is we put importance into that TARDIS being real and being a thing. But yeah, I think a lot of the kind of mystery surrounding the mother ends up not really working out for me in service of the execution. And it's nowhere near this bad, but I have found myself kind of comparing it to the Martha thing in Batman v Superman, where it's like I get that the undercurrent of what you're trying to do is like humanize the relationship between these two characters. You know, they're both human, but the like execution of it being like, Martha, why'd you say that name, is so bafflingly bad. This doesn't reach anywhere near that, but it's a case where I like the idea better than and again, it's not even the execution of the mom moment itself. It's all of the fake outs and lead ups and again, the red herrings kind of leading up to it. It's like, okay, but it seems like she was doing all of those things because the writer had her doing all of those things rather than she was an actual 15-year-old giving up her daughter. And so I didn't like that piece of it.
I didn't give a shit.
Sure.
Sorry. Yeah. I just like, oh, she was 15. Okay, that it turns out the mystery wasn't like really that deep of a mystery. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Rather than you try to do something convoluted in the last like 15 minutes of this episode, I'm good with it being like,
I'm not
like,
I don't think there's anything in the last 15 minutes of this episode that would have paid off all of the stuff leading up to it. So what I would much rather have had was less of the stuff leading up to it, less of the red herrings, less of the mystery becoming such a critical aspect of this character. Like Ruby, I mean, the first thing we see of Ruby in the Church on Ruby Road is Ruby meeting with Davina McCall and trying to like learn who her mother is. Also, it like has this whole thing of like, well, why the hell couldn't Davina McCall find this like person? Like, if that's the whole premise of that show, it seems like they probably would have had just as much luck here. But anyway, I think like a few fewer fake outs, like writers trick fake outs in the same vein of the thing that the woman is saying that can never possibly be resolved. Like there were too many of those that are, for me, couldn't have been satisfactorily like all of those pieces put together to make a satisfying result here. Whereas I think if you pull a few of those, you know, pieces out, a few of them are, you know, your appendix, where maybe they're not really necessary to the story and don't really add anything. So let's just take them out and you know, not poison the body. So
I guess
I think it's that kind of thing.
It just, for me, it felt like, oh, this is the resolution. Okay. Like, and like I feel like it works out, especially if you're like, oh, well, she's from like a very abusive background. She's been like hiding out for years. She can't let her, like, she's never had her DNA taken. It isn't until in the future where it's mandatory.
Yeah.
After the rise of a fascist regime.
Again, there are a lot of aspects of Louise's story that I really like. I like that they give, like, I think a very valid justification of why she wasn't able to have a kid. I like that the doctor kind of asks the question of like, she's had all these years to come and find you after the fact and hasn't. Do you think we should respect that? And I like that the mom said, I never came to find you because I thought you would hate me.
Yeah.
And that being
It's
a very
very
real like sensation around that trauma and everything around that.
How do you
and also the like, why did my dad never find me? Because the dad didn't know you existed.
Nope.
Like the like she found out she was pregnant, and basically like it was, you know, probably a one-time thing or something with them. They were young and in love and stupid, but then like she had the kid and gave him up without the dad knowing. I guess there's a little weirdness of that, of like, well, if they're both 15, like she would have like
it was
how did he not see her becoming more pregnant in this small
I
town or
immediately, why does she have this weird billowy cloak and everything? I was like, I have a feeling that it's something to do with the stepdad just being like really, really not okay for a lot of things.
That was actually the weird thing. Like when they were like, it was a bad situation at home. I thought they were about to go with like
the stepdad was
the stepdad is the dad kind
yeah.
of thing, and like take that dark turn.
Yeah, they weren't doing that though.
Yeah, no. So when they immediately follow up with like, your dad was also a 15-year-old, you know, young kid.
Here's my thing. I think Russell T Davies probably originally wrote it with the stepdad being the dad.
Sure, and maybe that was a Disney note.
Yeah, and Disney's
like, hey, we can't
Disney's
do
like,
this.
Fuck that, no.
We've given you a lot of money, so just make this one change.
Yeah, just make this one. Like, we have one note. What's the note? Ruby's dad can't also be her mom's stepdad.
Yeah.
Reasonable.
Fair enough. We don't need to go full down that path.
We don't need to go. Yeah, we don't need to get that dark with it.
Yeah.
No, like, but I also felt like, okay, well, it wasn't a good situation. That to me says, oh, if she had kept Ruby, her stepdad probably would have killed Ruby, or killed her, or killed the boyfriend, or like any of these things. Like, it sounds like there was a very violent individual.
Yeah, I mean,
that was like,
I definitely get the vibe of abusive, but I don't think necessarily like murderer. But yeah, I mean, certainly could have been a problem. So again, like ultimately, I walk away from the finale really liking the reality of Ruby's mom more so than the mystery of Ruby's mom.
That's fair.
I think is probably the best way I can really say that, because I love all of these little things that they gave us to give a satisfying conclusion and kind of an end to this, you know, season long arc of Ruby. And I like that. And I'll be curious to see maybe where this comes into play in the next season, because as we touched on in the last episode, the person who played Mundy in Boom is already announced that she will be kind of a new companion for the Doctor in the next season. And there were rumors and speculation kind of before the official announcement that she was fully replacing Millie Gibson as the companion. But now it seems that there's going to be at least some sort of overlap. So maybe Millie Gibson's there for the full season. Maybe she has a, you know, lesson thing. So what is going to kind of bring her back into the sphere? Obviously, she doesn't seem like she's going to be in the holiday episode. It seems like they're doing a kind of Kylie Minogue-esque thing where Nicola Coughlin's going to be in there for that.
Yeah, the emphasis, the big theory was like, did it not work out? Like, what was the recasting and everything? And then for it to turn out to be like, oh no, her story has like a very finite end here.
Yeah,
like there's a capstone to her end here that it makes sense, because she goes, well, I have to do this, I have to do that, and it's like, this is what happens with the Doctor's companions who don't die.
Yeah. They
have a real life they have to get back to. Yeah, and that's just the way it happens.
They have their own adventure. And I like that. I like the conversation that they have of like, you've traveled with me across the stars, you fought monsters, and this is a whole new adventure just beginning for you. Like, your next adventure is out there with your mom, with your dad that you're going to go meet, who, let's hope isn't secretly also related to Roger Ap Gwilliam. Although, like,
please don't.
Ultimately, like, if he ends up being, I think it completely undermines the like, hey, your mom wasn't anybody important, and that was the point.
Yeah.
It would very much be trying to have your Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker 2 and be like,
that doesn't work for a good reason.
That doesn't work. That makes zero sense.
Yeah, please don't do that.
But that said, I do like that they've at least maybe set up enough breadcrumbs to at least have justified it. So it wouldn't be coming out of nowhere. It would be okay, this is why that character was so important to Ruby and why, he popped up a couple times, and it would, the connection between your father's name was William and this other character being a son of William. It has the potential to be interesting, but I kind of like if I kind of like if he's just a nobody as well. And I think Russell T Davies has said that like part of her season 2 stuff will be we'll probably meet the father, or she'll meet the father. So we'll probably get something out of that.
But I don't want it. Don't do it. Don't want it.
I mean, I want it if he's a nobody kind of thing.
Oh no. Her meeting her dad, totally fine.
Yeah.
Don't give me the son of William crap. I don't want it. That being said, I'm really looking forward to the next season. I felt the way that they handled this is really, really great. What a phenomenal season. I think we're ready to do our rankings now of where we're placing them.
Indeed, yes. Let's dive into, firstly, we'll do, as always, our report card. What did you want to give season 1 / series 15 or series 14? I forget which one it is now. The Disney Plus first season of Ncuti Got was Doctor. On a scale of A+ to F, what do you want to give this season, Cam?
It's an A+. Even my biggest complaints get overshadowed by even the most moderate moments of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention the triumphs that it has. I just think that it does such an incredible job of just delivering on all cylinders. It's firing on all pistons are. Sorry, I'm mixing up my phrases here. It's firing on all cylinders. It's nailing everything. It's nailing everything that I needed to hit and then more. So even though we have things I hate, those things are so minor in comparison to the grand scale of this entire season.
Yeah. I'm with you right there. A+ for me as well. And yeah, despite between this episode and the last one, I didn't like a lot of stuff with Space Babies or today, 73 yards, but I still had a fun time watching those episodes. Those are very much episodes I won't revisit nearly as much as others. But I wasn't mad that I watched them. I didn't think any of them were a net negative, a net bad. I just they both had far more ups than downs to take the Simon Miller / what culture / who cultureism of it. But yeah, overall, I think Ncuti Got a phenomenal doctor and probably one of the best actors to have played the
Absolutely,
Doctor, all around. Mm-hmm. Up there with, I would say, probably Tennant and Matt Smith for me, and just hit the ground running. It is the worst part is that these are abbreviated seasons.
Yep.
And we just don't get as much of the Doctor in them.
Yep.
So I wish that weren't the case. I wish they were, more akin to 13 or, 15 or whatever episodes that earlier New Who stuff had done. But still, the stuff we get, just really, really good. So I have my ranking if you still need to put yours together. No,
I have my ranking.
Okay. So what is your number 9 episode then of the 9 episodes, including Church on Ruby Road?
It's going to be 73 yards for me.
Okay. So for me, it's Space Babies. So we are, a little different right out the gate, but 73 yards is my number 8. So
Space Babies is my number 8.
Yeah. So we're just kind of slightly switch there. Number 7 actually ends up being Empire of Death. Again, I don't hate the episode, and I don't think it's a bad episode, but I think a lot of my frustrations maybe around the mystery of the mother versus the reality of the mother just kind of bring this one down a little bit. I would say this is still one I'll gladly sit back and rewatch the 2-parter here to enjoy these, but just so many of the other episodes here are such heavy hitters that Empire of Death is my number 7. How about you?
This is a struggle for me because I don't know if I wanted to put The Legend of Ruby Sunday or Empire of Death here. I'm a little bit more fond of Empire of Death. I feel like there's a lot more going on with the kind of the larger contextual stuff of the overall Sutek and like kind of the hunt for the doctor and like Ruby's mom kind of prevailing throughout this episode.
And the idea that, hey, Sutek has been there for almost 50 years and has been leaving a Susan twist out there.
Every time.
Again, the actress that plays that Susan Triad character. Yeah, every planet he's landed on, we've only finally noticed it in these last, in this last season and change. But like, again, it kind of gets peppered in the Wild Blue Yonder thing. It makes sense maybe then why, even there, it doesn't quite make sense because we see multiple versions of her on Earth, starting with Church on Ruby Road. But yeah, like the idea that there is a variation of that character, and we see a couple of them kind of in like montage at the beginning of the previous episode. I do like that. Like, there is the history of that, and we talk about all of the planets that the Doctor has landed on, and so hey. Good news is it means all the Daleks are destroyed, but also, every other planet that he's landed on has also destroyed them. So, yeah, I get that. So you're thinking Legend of Ruby Sunday here at number 7 for you? Okay. That is my number 6. So it is kind of the two-parter here is kind of the 6 and 7 spot for me.
I apologize. No, it's Dot and Bubble is mine for this one.
Dot and Bubble's your 6?
Is my 7, sorry.
Oh, your number 7. Okay.
Yeah. My number 6 is The Legend of Ruby Sunday. Then.
Okay. Okay.
Am I messing up the order of this, or am I still good?
No, I mean you're good. I'm just trying to catch up. So my number 5 then is Church on Ruby Road. So do we get is your number 5 then Empire of Death?
Yes,
because you like that one a little bit better than Legend of Ruby Sunday. Cool. I guess. So circling back to Dot and Bubble, that's your number 7, you said?
Yes.
Is there a particular reason it's so low? Because I think we were both very glowing on it.
Oh, I mean, it's just...
You like the other ones better.
Yeah.
That's it.
We're now in the territory of, like, we're in all the ones I love.
Yeah, and anything other than Space Babies and 73 Yards banger after banger, it's just 100%. A matter of like the order of banger.
Yeah, it's just like what I liked a little bit more, what I liked a little bit less. Like, this is where we're at. This is the territory we're at.
I think the lore hound in you
that's why.
Makes sense that the 2-part finale gets a little bit higher than Dot and Bubble.
That's really what it is. It's the contextualization of everything with the finale, the 2-part finale within like the larger scoping Doctor Who like meta narrative. That does it for me.
Yeah.
The idea that Sutek has been hanging on to the TARDIS for 50 years, just like.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
In the same vein of like, it was really cool they brought the toy maker back after almost 60 years.
Pretty much same thing. Like you get into the legends and the deeper stuff. I'm into it. Super big.
Church on Ruby Road is my 5. I think it was obviously it's not one I've watched recently since it's technically part of this first season, but we got it kind of as the Christmas special last year. But it was such a great introduction to this version of the Doctor and this companion in Ruby. And I love that it also does a good job of introducing the idea that whatever the toy maker did has brought a little bit more magic into this world. And we're not going to be hard sci-fi. There is going to be weird fantasy stuff in here. We're going to get goblins, trying to kill or to steal children for their time essence, and we're gonna get the Doctor straight up hot fuzzing the Goblin King by pulling the ship out of the sky onto the church steeple. So also it had a fun little musical number bit. Shout out to that. Oh, speaking of musical numbers, going back to Rogue, shout out to not only the Kylie Minogue stuff, but shout out to the Doctor singing a little bit of Pure Imagination.
Yeah.
There's another thing I didn't pull in specifically as trivia, in particular, I guess, because IMDb didn't have it listed, and shame on them, because as the story goes, Shudigatwa reached out to his agent about a week or so before he auditioned for the Doctor to say, hey, I would really love to play the Doctor, or I would really love to play Willy Wonka. And obviously Timothée Chalamet ended up getting the Willy Wonka stuff, but the fact that Shudigatwa kind of brought willed his role of the Doctor into existence at the same time that they were looking to cast a new Doctor was really cool. And so I like that this is a kind of they also gave him a chance to have a Willy Wonka moment when he sings a couple lines of Pure Imagination. So shout out to that. But yeah, Church on Ruby Road, just a fun start to the season, fun introduction of a lot of these characters. Works way better as a season opener than Space Babies ends up doing, where Space Babies is just, again, the weakest of the episodes here. Not terrible, but a weird, intro, a weird jumping on point if you didn't watch the, special at the end of last year. So weird that they, threw that in here as the first episode this time. So you said your 5 is Emperor of Death. So we get up to number 4. What's your number 4?
My number 4 is. This is where we're really getting tough. This is where it's really, really getting tough. Okay, so run me through what we have left. We have Maestro.
I don't know what you have left.
Oh, sorry. So there's Maestro. There is Rogue.
Devil's Cord,
Rogue,
Boom, and you still have Church on Ruby Road.
Sorry, Boom is here. We are with Boom.
You're at Boom. Okay.
Boom's here. Boom would normally be put lower. However, there is a lot of emotional pull that Ncuti Gatwa does here on this, very he's on a bomb, and I'm normally not a big fan of episodes like this, of shows like this. It's the same thing that I'm not the biggest fan of Prison Break episodes. I've seen it so many times. Getting this one though got a level of panic and manicness in the Doctor that we don't normally get to see. It got very emotional, and the idea that love transcends circuitry and algorithms
and life itself
warms my very heart, and also completely invigorates my hate of capitalism. The fact that and also the fact it has real life parallels that we're dealing with right now with the military industrial complex and how it works.
And the woes of AI right
now. And everything else going on with it. It's it speaks to me both as an analyst and as a fan of storytelling. That it does double duty. And so for me, it hits personally on a very deep level.
Yeah. For my number 4 is Dot and Bubble, which we already discussed.
Yep.
But yeah, I think as a standalone, the layered nature of it that we discussed, I appreciate so many more things upon a rewatch of this one, made it a lot more fun. And so, yeah, it climbs ahead of some of those other things for me. My number 3 is Boom, which again, you just spoke to. And I think it's absolutely fun getting Stephen Moffat back as the voice of the Doctor in this, and really kind of doing that Stephen Moffat thing of, hey, the Doctor's greatest power is his words and his mind. And how do you really kind of draw that out? You make it so he can't do anything else. He can only talk, because if he moves, he dies. So I think they did a great job of giving us, again, this is a much more traditional bottle episode, even though it is a big crater on a space planet. It's a crater set on a volume, so they can kind of throw in the big space planet digitally. But yeah, it pretty much all happens within a crater. So I think there's a ton of fun there. And I'm especially curious to see how, I didn't jot her name down for this one, but how the person who is in this one, who will be the new companion, I'm curious to see, because they very much kind of said, hey, Mundy Flynn's, story is over, but she will be returned. This actress will be returning. Yeah. So, is there going to be is it going to be, are they going to go Peter Capaldi with it, where it's why do I recognize this face? What is this face trying to tell me? Why have I found somebody that looks exactly like, Mundy Flynn? Or are they just going to kind of play it off as, another example would be Amy Pond was in the Vampires of, Venice episode as one of the, vampire ladies or whatever. But she's much more background character. So when she comes in and becomes Amy Pond, or Karen Gillan comes in and becomes Amy Pond, they don't have to make any kind of reference to this other role she had played on the show. But I think this is there's going to be maybe some kind of middle ground here where You did play a notable character in a past episode just last season. So is this doctor going to recognize you? Is that what's that relationship going to be? Or are they lying and it is going to be like the same character and doctor has just, as he said, I'm going to check in on you and see how you're doing in the fight against Villain Guard. But yeah, really like Boom, a lot of fun. And again, like these top three especially are just banger, banger, banger. It's just a matter of the order that I really like them in. So what is your number 3? I think you still have Church on Ruby Road, Devil's Court, and Rogue.
Yeah, this is where we're really running into like dangerous territory for me. This is where Devil's Court comes into play.
Okay.
Devil's Court, this is a phenomenal episode. I love the fact that it's like the doctor's on his back foot the entire time, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. We get into the child of the toy maker, the maestro. This entire idea of play coming into effect here. It goes to show like my top 3 favorite episodes are the ones that have, or 2 of my top 3 favorite episodes are the ones that have to do with this kind of like additional element that's been added to the universe of Doctor Who, of play. In this case, it's now music coming in and really taking the center stage, so to speak. And what happens when the god of music is a diva who just wants to keep all of music to themselves. We get a very fun, like, alternate history where music's not cool. Being a musician's looked down on, and I mean, it still is, but you know.
There, I didn't call this out either, but there is a theory going around that the really bad song that the Beatles sing, where they're talking about they're singing about their their dead dog that is now alive or something like that, as a foreshadowing of Sutek. And I'm like, okay.
I don't recall the dog being dead in the song.
I think those are the lyrics.
No, they say this is my dog. It's not your dog. It's like dog's name is Spot, like something like that. I don't recall them ever saying the dog died.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can find the.
Well, you do that. I'll go ahead and finish my thoughts on it. As somebody who's definitively like not a fan of the Beatles, really love the style. Really love the kind of like the era of it. I love how excited they are about it. I love that it's like, we got to talk. Let's get a cup of tea. Like, there's a lot of the fun elements of that, but really for me, it is the draw of the maestro hunting down the doctor. Like, we get a bit of a horror aspect to this episode. We get this idea of like what happens when there's no music in the world. Well, the world goes to war for reasons it doesn't even understand. Like a lot of fun commentary on society, on culture, and on the importance of these like big moments in cultural history. I always say like I don't care for the Beatles because all my favorite bands were but even though my favorite bands were inspired by the Beatles, the Beatles to me aren't as impressive because the bands they inspired are way more important to me. And I think are better than them. I think you get into this aspect and this idea of like what does the like legacy of these these ideas and or not ideas, the legacy of these I almost said characters, but they're not characters. They're real life individuals. But like the legacy of what the Beatles have towards music, towards England, towards pop culture as a whole is like undeniably important and impactful. But I think overall, like the idea of the maestro being just somebody who consumes music and creativity and will appear wherever somebody starts being like putting out music to literally devour them, is also like, I feel like a bit of commentary on the state of music companies and recording companies and things like that, where the idea of like, what does it mean to be an artist versus the kind of like corporate consumption of what's hot, what's not, who's in control of music and what music gets put out there. You can kind of see that kind of layer of commentary to it. And I'm vamping at this point now because you are still looking for whatever the trivia is about this dog Spot being dead or not dead and being a thing about Sutek.
Yeah, I feel like I found, or I'd seen the thing kind of, making the rounds on like Instagram or something like that, but I'm not able to find the specific lyrics that like, I would need to go back and just rewatch the episode with like the subtitles on to actually find them at this point, because they don't appear to be easily available out there. But yeah, I'm just saying I had seen this idea that like them singing about a dog was foreshadowing Sutek. But anyway, yeah, for me, The Devil's Court is my number 2. And yeah, I think Jinx Monsoon's performance in it is phenomenal, and like I absolutely want them to come back and be kind of a fun like recurring villain, especially like they set up in the 2-part finale. Here are a whole bunch of name drops of other gods in this pantheon.
Yes,
I would love that with Sutek out of the picture, if they play with this idea that creates a power struggle, and we get the Toymaker coming back, out of his salt infused purgatory or whatever. We get get Maestro back. We get the Trickster, pulled out of the Sarah Jane Adventures or something like that. And I would love to see like maybe that ends up being like the big bad finale of season 2, is like all of those forces coming together and the Doctor has to overcome all of them or something like that.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that the idea of like the Maestro being able to pop out and all these other gods coming out because the Toymaker got put away. And the idea of like, okay, well, Sutek and the Toymaker are gone. What happens when 2 of the big bads of this pantheon are suddenly gone?
Yeah.
Like, what do we run into?
And Maestro is now kind of like banished back with the, the devil or the cord. Lots of fun in that one, and yeah, we talked about it glowingly in the previous episode, so I won't dig too deep in here. But yeah, Devil's Cord was my number 2, and since I know we both have the same number 1, that means your number 2 is we finally get to Church on Ruby Road.
Nope.
Right? No. Wow.
Rogue is my number 2.
Wow. Okay. You said earlier in this very episode that Rogue was you were like, spoilers, Rogue is my favorite episode of the season. So
it was until I like started listing it out and I realized that there's something about the Church on Ruby Road that puts it above Rogue.
Okay.
And so I think, and this is also any given Sunday, like this could change tomorrow. Like I
feel like if you watch Rogue again, your horniness and thirstiness is gonna be like, no, what was I thinking? Of course this is number 1.
That, or I could have like, I'm aberosexual, man. Like I could have flowed. I could be flowing differently now than I was then. Like, sure. Or even 20 minutes ago. It happens. It's awful. That being said, I will say that the reason why I will say, so everything I said about Rogue, absolutely true. It's my number 2 for those reasons. The reason why Church on Ruby Road is my favorite is because I think it is, in my opinion, the best debut episode of a Doctor.
Okay.
I know he technically debuted in the prior special, but when it comes to like a launch episode,
every Doctor has that. They always appear at the end of a thing.
Yeah.
And just because he had a little bit more time and a little bit of a crossover with the previous Doctor, which we don't normally get, yeah, this was still very much his first episode.
This is, as far as like a launch episode for this Doctor, this is my favorite launch episode we've ever gotten. This is my favorite, like episode 1 from that. The narrative levels that it plays with, the introduction of the companion character, the way that they like immediately like start firing on all cylinders, going into their adventure, trying to rescue a baby from goblins. Like, it's aspects of like, we've never seen this before in Doctor Who with things like the fantasy elements, but also we're immediately getting like touchstones to prior, Russell T Davies stuff, like with Rose, the comparison between Rose and Ruby, the like very cool touchstones to that, but also Doctor using gadgets, the weight gloves, and then the weight gloves coming back at the end. There's so much that they're introducing in this episode that I feel like it never misses a beat. And when I talk about other debuts of Doctors, like other ones come like there. I think the next best one is Matt Smith's.
I think, yeah, for like as you're kind of saying this, I think I'm thinking and kind of ranking them through my own head, and I think Matt Smith still probably ekes this one out for me, in particular because I love him meeting young Amelia, and then like I'll be right back, and then coming back, and the like mystery of where did Amelia Pond go, and then meeting Amy Pond and that whole thing. Also, I think the like him calling back species 10 or whatever it was to and basically being like basically Run, and his whole like monologue of like why they should fear the oncoming storm that is this Doctor, I think is just a great like intro to this. And we get that kind of like speech of this Doctor later in this season. Like
Sure.
we get that much more in the Rogue talking to Rogue about who he has been and the many faces he's worn and all that stuff.
I think for me though, it's the idea that it's not relying on past Doctor narrative.
Yep.
It's not like
Absolutely.
this is brand new from the get-go. There's touchstones to previous stuff, so we feel familiar with it, but there is also, but I also love that there's the aspect of like, it is weighing on the Doctor that like, yeah, I am adopted. Like the revelation of the Doctor's, like for the Doctor to recognize that at some point in time, they were somebody different than the Doctor as we know them. The introduction of the timeless child, all that still is weighing on them. We know that from 14th Doctor talking about it there.
Yep.
We know that continues now. And it's different than just like this absolute guilt that's weighing on them. But it is something that is still very like on their mind. Like, oh, I was adopted too. Like, this is special. The idea of like adopted babies is something being special, of people who you aren't related to finding and loving you is a very special thing. And the way that it's like Ruby's adopted mother is a woman who literally spends her life taking care of children before they find their home that they're going to go to. And her fridge is full of photos of these children that she has, for all intents and purposes, rescued and saved and given love and shown, and to the point where either they live with her until they're grown up, or they find like forever like homes for these kids to go to that they are loved for the rest of their lives. Like there's something very special about that to me, about like as somebody who did grow up with like a foster parent.
I think your foster parent relationship is
Yeah.
really like
Yes.
that is absolutely resonating 1,000% in that
Yeah.
first episode.
It
and
is.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It touches on that, but it also touches on like why the Doctor is a special character and individual, because the Doctor is, why is the Doctor trying to save the space races? Because the Doctor loves them no matter what. The Doctor loves people no matter what. No matter how many times they disappoint him, no matter how many times they hurt him, the Doctor will always put that hand out to reach out to help people, because that's who they are. And I feel like this grounds that in a way that we can get to explore that for the rest of the season. And so for me, this is by far my favorite Doctor launch. And for that, it slowly ekes out. Now, you ask me tomorrow, I might switch back to Rogue being my favorite. I think as an episodes go, like just on equal footing, Rogue is the best episode. But like where my personal rankings are is going to be like, there is something very uniquely special about Church on Ruby Road.
Sure. I think, I think in the conversation, I hadn't really given it a ton of thought, but I think, it's a tight race between the Matt Smith introduction and the Ncuti Gatwa introduction. And like Matt Smith, because I've lived with it longer and like have a little bit of nostalgia to it, there's a little bit of love there.
Well, there's a speech also. There's a big grandiose speech in it. Like that's appealing. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Like that's lovely.
Versus the Ncuti Gatwa one, which it's a very close second. And for that to be so recent, and especially as somebody who kind of during the Capaldi era kind of tuned out and like would catch up later, and then watched most of the Jodie Whittaker stuff kind of well after those episodes originally aired, and actually still haven't watched all the Flux stuff. I feel like I started to watch the Flux stuff like 2 or 3 times, and I've just never gotten through those 6 episodes.
It's rough.
Yeah. But yeah, this was such a fun, reinvigorating reintroduction into loving this series and this kind of universe and franchise and stuff. So absolutely, not trying to take anything away from like your sentiment that this is like the best kind of Doctor introduction. But for me, as we touched on, like obviously Church of Ruby Road ends up being kind of my middle of the pack for this run episodes. I think it's great, but I just liked a lot of the more standalone-y things better, leading to Rogue being my number one. And yeah, I think
when you put it at number 5, I was like, I know. I'm like, why do I have that reaction? It's like, oh, that's when it clicked for me. I'm like, oh no, like this is the moment where I'm realizing I think Ruby Road, like Church on Ruby Road, is better.
I mean, even like I'll also throw out, like, I put together a list like last night as I was going to bed because I knew we were going to kind of do this on the episode here. And even when I put that list together last night, I had Legend of Ruby Sunday ahead of Church on Ruby Road. But then as we were kind of discussing through the episodes today, I was like, actually, I think I liked that just a little bit less. So I'm going to bump Church on Ruby Road.
What a great season.
1. But yeah, it was very much the like the revelation that I just like Dot and Bubble, Boom, Devil's Chord, Rogue, all just better than that kind of first taste that we get of the two characters. Although I will say, like, again, so much, like, even in Rogue, one of the, like the minor like I have two kind of very minor criticisms about Rogue that we didn't really touch on. One of them is it is another episode in which the Doctor and Ruby are kind of doing their own thing and aren't really together. Yep. In a season where already we don't get a lot of the two of them really together. So as I said, like, the moment when the Doctor's like, Ruby, she's my best friend, it's like, is she though? Because we've barely seen you two together. And like,
it's because this Doctor doesn't have any other friends right now.
It is like, there is innately a great chemistry between the two performers, so I buy it. But narratively, in terms of the amount of screen time the two of them had together, it just rings a little false.
Well, who else is going to be his best friend?
I mean, that is the problem, is that the Doctor, like, yeah, the Doctor's companion is always his best friend of the moment. It's just the like, it again, it's a case where, like, you just didn't need to say she's my best friend. You could have just said, my friend, yes, Ruby. Like, the best friend piece of it is the, like, well, that's just weird. Because it's the kind of thing of, like, you could still say Donna. Like, yeah, sure, Donna is really the best friend of 14, but, like, you still also spent all that time with Donna, who was, until 6 months ago, your best friend. So you've just replaced your best friend with a new best friend. But yeah, like, it's that is the thing that rings a little untrue. And as much as I love the romance between the Doctor and Rogue, it is so fast, especially compared to, like, the 2-season burn with Rose, that it's like, it's whiplash. It's like, wow, this could play into a bunch of negative stereotypes about gender dynamic relationships and stuff like that. Where, like, so that was the weird thing for me watching it, is like, wow, they are just burning through all of the beats of this relationship and
it's
dynamic.
It's also like not great stereotypically for like gay romance in general, not just in media, but in, like, real life. Like, if you know some gay couples, sometimes they come together really quickly out of nowhere.
No, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying is, like,
it's problematic.
It really plays into, obviously, different gender, but it really plays into the lesbians moving in together immediately stereotype kind of vibe.
Yep.
I've heard less of that in terms of, like, a stereotype on gay men together. But
it's less of gay men moving in together and all of a sudden gay men being in, like, intimate relationships very quickly with one another.
Yeah.
That's what I was referring to. Yeah, no, the trope of lesbians move in together and move into a cottage together, very stereotypical. For men, it's like, oh, we just met, great, we are now deeply in love with each other. Like, that's a very like stereotypical thing for gay romance. Like, we met each other once and now we're soulmates. So it's like, yeah, you see that.
And I say that having absolutely put my foot in my mouth and, like, moved way too fast in relationship to my own self.
For sure. Yeah.
But so maybe it's also a little bit of, like, PTSD and, like, I know better in hindsight that this 2-hour evening at a ball that you guys have had is way too fast for you to be talking about find me in the infinite abyss of forever kind of
Well, it's the Doctor. He lives forever. He can find him.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have to be tomorrow. It'll be tomorrow for Rogue.
Yeah.
But for the Doctor, it'll be years,
Yeah,
That's
let's hope. And let's hope that it's not. Because that was I think that, like, it was fascinating kind of like seeing the theories kind of unfold over the course of the season, because there was a theory following Rogue of like, maybe years have passed and Rogue finally got out, and maybe Rogue, is involved with the mysterious figure or something, and is going to come out angry that it took the Doctor, or that the Doctor never came and found them, or something like that. Again, I hope they don't go that route, but like that was one of the theories I saw floating around in terms of like how the maybe Rogue's going to be the big bad at the end or something like that.
I would hope not. I would just love it to be like a lover companion at one point or something. Give me Jonathan Groff as a companion. Yes, please. Yeah. Thank you.
That would be fun.
First American companion.
First. Actually American.
Actually, yeah, because Captain Jack's supposed to be American, right?
Well, no, Captain Jack is an alien.
Is
a future space,
future spaceman, yeah,
space-time alien, like a time agent or whatever. Yeah. But no, there was a companion in old Doctor Who that was a British actress playing as an American.
It's the Eighth Doctor. The Eighth Doctor.
Well, yeah. So even I'm talking even before that. I want to say this was maybe fourth, maybe Tom Baker era. It's one that like this is one I just saw and was reading up on a little bit recently. Because it was in a video of like things you may not have known about Doctor Who, or times Doctor Who lied to you. It was a Who Culture video that's basically that, and it was she would go and do interviews and be on like BBC programs, and she would keep the American accent, but like, Peter Davidson, who was dating, an American woman at the time or something like that, basically said like, I knew she wasn't English. I knew she was British and doing a bad accent. It didn't fool me. So it was sometime around that era. I don't know if it was, I think it would have been Tom Baker if it was Peter Davison kind of like reflecting back on it. But one of those like early Who pre Paul McGann. But yeah, Paul McGann's companion also would have been an American, since they were trying to do the whole thing set in America for that one.
Yep.
I think so. Yeah, Jonathan Groff would probably be the first actual American companion. And I don't think they'd be able to get him for a full season. I think he's too busy and loves doing Broadway stuff too much. But I could fully see him coming back.
He's not going to come back to make out more with Shidigatwa?
I don't think so. I very much would see him in like a holiday special next season or something, next Christmas. They find him and bring him back, and he's like the companion.
Oh my gosh, they'll do a orchestra rendition of Last Christmas. Yes, please and thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
By George Michael. The point is this by George. Anyway.
Sure.
Anyway.
Wham. Yeah. Anyway. Yes. Lots
Scoffs
of great
and queer.
Stuff. Sure. So yeah, those are the two very minor like issues I had with Rogue. Other than that, like Rogue is just such a fun. It was also like we hadn't gotten that kind of like, classic period Doctor Who in a little while.
Sure.
So that was another fun kind of like return to form. And yeah, I think they just did a ton of fun with it. I think the villains were very fun and interesting and visually fun and engaging. I loved that this was all just a game to them, and they were just kind of like body snatching and body like we didn't talk really about like their plot, throughout the entire thing. But like I like that even the cold open is like one of them being like, oh my God, I'm so bland boring and you're the dick, so I'm definitely going to just become you now.
Yeah.
And
like your role is so much more interesting than mine.
The like one's basically like the cook, and she gets pissed off. She's like, you know what? No, I'm not going to be the downstairs person anymore. I'm going to take you. I'm going to be you now. And she goes and becomes the Duchess. And so, yeah, I love that this very much was just them like being like pawns in a game of chess who are like, I'm going to level up now and be the thing that I want to be.
Yeah.
You kind of at their whim. So yeah, lots of fun there. I also liked the twist reveal that like the person we thought was just that Ruby was just kind of like being friendly with was also one of them and kind of in on the whole thing. But Ruby's, magic dance earrings turned on to attack mode and got her out of that scrape. So yeah, lots of fun in that one. And that's why it ends up at the top of my list for the season rankings. But overall, yeah, like I said, the only two that like were even close to duds, and even them, I didn't like. I thought there was way more fun and good redeeming elements than bad. Were Space Babies and 73 Yards.
Yep.
Everything else leaps and bounds above that, but even those two, I had a fun time with, and I think. Again, especially with like the reason 73 Yards ekes out Space Babies is I think 73 Yards is such a great. Here's why Ruby is a good companion.
Yeah.
Even without the Doctor, she's doing what's right, and she's using her brain, and she's doing all of the things that you love to see in a fun companion. So, cool. Then yeah, extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. Disney Plus is going to recommend Renegade Nell, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the series, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Loki, the Doctor Who specials 1, 2, and 3, and last time we talked about this, they had the Doctor Who special 4, but that was just the Church on Ruby Road episode. So instead, that has been pulled and is now recommending Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which again, I would say the real things to watch here would be the other three Doctor Who, the Doctor Who 60th anniversary specials. Extracurriculars, you watch anything else on Disney Plus there, Cam?
Yeah, The Acolyte.
Yep.
It's been great. So
we'll
talk more about that next week.
It was this week's episode was Day compared to, or no, it was Destiny, then Day, and this episode was Night.
Yes.
Good, fun, action-centric episode. So yeah,
some of the best action we've seen in Star Wars since Disney's acquisition.
Yeah, and we will circle back to that next week's episode where we will talk about episodes 5 and 6 of The Acolyte. So stay tuned for that. That's going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to talk about our nerdy love of Doctor Who all season long. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, we just recently did an episode on for that Nerdy Site Show where you talked about. You did not talk about Dragon Inquisition. You talked about.
I talked about Inside
Out 2. That's right. Yeah, Inside Out 2. Because I was like, video games. You haven't been playing the video games lately. Yep. No, and then I talked a lot about Shadow of the Erdtree DLC expansion. I have a lot more thoughts that won't be shared this weekend because you'll be gone.
I get back on Sunday, so we can probably do
record.
it. We'll probably still record. I mean, especially since we'll just record after you get off work Sunday night.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah, I'll be able to talk way more about it because I've almost beaten the DLC at this point. So
nice.
Yep, just in time for Dawn Trail.
Cool. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, and as Cameron alluded to, my shout out is going to be for our friend Logan Wilkinson, who's getting married this weekend. And I'm heading out to California for that. I will basically be probably when this episode goes live, I'll probably be at the airport waiting to fly out for that wedding. So should have a fun time there. But yeah, it's a quick turnaround trip, basically flying out Friday, flying back Sunday. I'll be back in time for That Nerdy Site Show this weekend. So we will keep things as normal moving forward. But yeah, shout out to Logan and Shravya. Many happy returns, and looking forward to seeing / meeting because I've not actually met Shravya apart from like back when I think Logan and I were doing that Bond show. I think she popped on webcam and we chatted a little bit after recording one of those episodes or something like that. But beyond that, I don't think I've really met or interacted with her directly too much. So looking forward to meeting her in person. Because they basically started dating right around the same time that Nerdy Site launched. I remember, as Logan and I often talk about, like him kind of talking about this girl that he was crushing on and pseudo starting to date when we were playing Borderlands 3 and talking about all of our hopes and dreams for That Nerdy Site right before we launched. So, you follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you like what you heard, please remember to like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other. Class dismissed.